Hey, folks, today's episode is brought to you by sunsetlakecbd.com. They have a major end of the summer sale going on, and it's still going on. We got 13, I don't know how many days are in September. The whole month of September, it is 50% off. 50% off all hand-trimmed hemp flower smalls and keef mat.
Oh, yeah.
The sale runs through the end of the month of September. They're ramping up for their 2021 harvest season. So to celebrate, 50% off all of their premium hemp flour. Just use the promo code FlowerPower at checkout. Now, Sunset Lake is not only they're not only what I call one of our movement partners. They contributed $1,000 to the Afghan refugee fundraiser that we did. They've contributed thousands of dollars to the Worcester nurses who are on strike, still on strike. They do a lot of work in their community up outside of Burlington. Great business practices, $15 minimum wage. They have great farming practices. No pesticides. They use integrated pest management, 100% organic fertilizer. They use regenerative agriculture practices, and on top of all of these things, they make a great product. Whether it's the fudge, the coffee, the gummies, the tincture with melatonin they have now.
Love that one.
That one is sweet. Whether it's the balm with arnica. They have so many different versions of CBD, folks. And, of course, they have the smalls and the keef. And that's on sale for 50% off. Use Flower Power. For everything else, left is best. One word will get you 20% off. That's sunsetlakecbd.com. All right, now it's time for the show.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder, where every day's Casual Friday. That means Monday is Casual Monday, Tuesday, Casual Tuesday, Wednesday, Casual Hump Day, Thursday, Casual Thurs, that's what we call it, and Friday, Casual Shabbat. The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
It is Friday, September 17th, 2021. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Astra Taylor, co-founder of the Debt Collective, author of the recent book Remake the World, to discuss the 10-year anniversary of Occupy Wall Street. Also on the program to look back on the week in politics, Heather Parton, or Digby, from the blog Hullabaloo and from Salon.com. Also on the program today, corporate Democrats in the House back channel with Manchin and Cinema to kill low-cost prescription drugs. Because, of course. Meanwhile, the debt limit is 2 weeks away. And supposedly, the vote on the bipartisan infrastructure bill is 10 days away. On the COVID front, Idaho now forced to allow its overwhelmed hospitals to ration care. And in the weeks that school has started, hundreds of thousands of children have become infected. Meanwhile, Alexander Vindman, that retired lieutenant general, or I should say colonel, calls for General Milley's resignation. Federal judge orders the end of Title 42 at the border. Speaking of which, the Border Patrol is detaining more than 9,000 mostly Haitian migrants under a bridge in Texas. Republicans prep a big Washington rally in defense of the January 6th attackers. Not a joke. Ohio Republican congressman, meanwhile, announces retirement, citing Donald Trump as a cancer in the GOP. I think that gives you a sense of where the numbers are in this. The Durham grand jury announces an indictment and lands a guppy. Lastly, a Capitol police officer is investigated for sharing information about the secure location of lawmakers on January 6th to the people who are attacking them. All this and more on today's program. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us. It is, of course, Friday, and that is that's the end of the week, and Emma Vigeland is here.
Hello.
I wanted to say something profound about Friday, and then I ran out of things.
It's after Thursday Night Football?
Yeah, well, I guess. Also, Yom Kippur. So I fasted yesterday, so I'm a little bit, still a little bit out of it.
Well, between that and your food poisoning situation, I don't know if that was public. Yep. Maybe you lost a little bit of weight. Not that you need to, but that's.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
But
all of that.
I always try to take silver linings out of those kinds of situations. Not that I fast. Anyway, I'm a little out of it, obviously, myself. Yeah. So
somebody's a little bit upset about the Giants. We're not going to go into it, but people understand out there. So a lot of things happening over the next couple of weeks. I mean, we're watching the slow dissolution of the Democratic infrastructure proposal as all the talk that we heard after the Democrats won in 2020, that the squad was a liability, et cetera, et cetera. Now we're watching a bunch of corporate Dems who are servicing only really corporations. I mean, let's be honest here. Is there really a voting constituency, I don't care how purple your district is, that is in favor of higher price prescription drugs? I mean, that's the question. And
did Joe Manchin and his daughter have their own district?
Well, exactly. And it's not just Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema. There are 3 Democrats in the House who have been written about extensively, who are able to take down, apparently, this prescription drug element of this bill, which is so that Medicare and the government can negotiate rates for prescription drugs, the savings of which were going to be used to expand benefits for Medicare subscribers, I guess, and perhaps drop the age of who is eligible for Medicare. We should also tell you that when you start talking about Medicare providing dental for people ages 65 and over, the healthcare providers, the hair on their back starts going up, because they start thinking like, oh, well, if we're negotiating with Medicare, we're going to lose money. And that's basically the dynamic that's going on here. Now, we'll see what happens. But, we know that there are at least 17 Democrats who have publicly committed to not voting for the bipartisan bill if the reconciliation bill is not there at that time. And there, as far as we know, not enough Republicans to essentially defang that threat.
Right.
And so... And
just vote for the bipartisan bill.
Exactly.
To decouple it. It would be a smart strategy for them to do that, but I don't think they have enough. They're too extreme in wanting to oppose everything that Biden is putting forward.
Yeah, and I think look, at this point, the progressives should hold their ground and sink this stuff and make everybody pay for this situation because we're in, that zone where if we cannot get an entire sandwich right now, accepting a quarter of the sandwich is not enough. Here's Joe Biden delivering remarks about his economic plan at the White House. And really what he should be doing, it seems to me, is calling out these Democrats in the House and in the Senate by name and asking, bring one of your constituents over who's looking for higher price prescription drugs. Bring them to the White House. We'll give them a tour. That's what I'd like to hear him say.
Minutes ago, 55 most profitable corporations in America paid zero in federal income taxes on what amounted to $40 billion in profit. Not a penny. That's not right. My economic plan will change that. Not punish anybody, just make them pay their fair share. But my Republican friends in Congress don't want to change the law. So what are they doing? They're attacking me and my plan, which is fine. But if you're going to have a debate, let's have an honest debate. My Republican friends are attacking my plan, saying it's big spending. Let me remind you, these are the same folks who just 4 years ago passed the Trump tax cut, totaling almost $2 trillion in tax cuts. A giant giveaway to the largest corporations in the top 1%. And listen to this. Almost none of that $2 trillion tax cut was paid for. It just ballooned the federal deficit. In fact, the unpaid bills racked up by the last administration are projected to increase the national debt by more than $8 trillion over time. What I'm proposing is totally different from that approach for three reasons. First, my plan is paid for. It's fiscally responsible because our investments are paid for by making sure that corporations and wealthy Americans pay their fair share. Second, we're not going to raise taxes on anyone making under $400,000. That's a lot of money. Some of my liberal friends are saying it should be lower than that. But only corporations and people making over $400,000 a year are going to pay any additional tax. And third, not only will no one making under $400,000 see their taxes go up, the middle class are going to get some tax cuts, some breaks. My plan benefits ordinary Americans, not those at the top who don't need the help. It's a historic middle-class tax cut, cutting taxes for over 50 million families.
Personally, I think all this rhetoric is pretty stale.
You're right.
And it's all stuff that we hear before. It's completely boilerplate stuff.
You've never heard middle class tax cuts before?
One wonders who this is for at this point. Like I say, none of this is new, and the only thing that even sounded even remotely decent in that, and it comes way too late. Why have they not been running against the Trump tax cuts? Even if you're going to say we're going to get rid of the Trump tax cuts were irresponsible, we're going to get rid of all of them except for the ones that tax people under that would increase taxes under $400,000. Donald Trump is singularly unpopular in this country by at least the majority of people.
Kristen Sinema, why are you advocating for keeping the Trump tax cuts? In Arizona, a state that is like the exact kind of demo right now that this Democratic Party is targeting of, suburbanite types voting against Donald Trump.
And if you're worried about your $400,000 one, you say the Trump wealthy tax cuts. The Trump rich tax cuts, whatever it is, come up with somebody, spend some of that money and figure out what
the Trump tax cuts for the rich.
Yeah,
right, exactly.
Right.
I mean, that's it. And it just there's a real feeling that actually doing politics at the White House seems to have been taking a back seat. I mean, if there's been an inside game, we're not seeing any of the.
Why do politics when we can just fall back on the beautiful path forward of Senate procedure? That seems to be the only thing he's committed to in this area.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking to Astra Taylor on the 10-year anniversary of Occupy Wall Street. Folks, got a couple of sponsors today on the show. Common scenario, you need to see a doctor. You search and you find one that looks good, great. You wait on hold to book an appointment, not so great. Finally, they pick up, you rearrange your schedule, and when you finally go in, you find out doctor doesn't even take your insurance. Well, you could avoid all of that. Well, except for the part you need to see a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Just download the free ZocDoc app. It's the easiest way to find a great doctor and instantly book an appointment. So what happens is on ZocDoc, you search for local doctors, ones who take your insurance. You read verified patient reviews about that doctor, and then you book an appointment. You can do that in person or video chat. In terms of the appointment, you'll never wait on hold with a receptionist again. Doesn't matter if you need a primary care physician, a dentist, a dermatologist, a psychiatrist, an eye doctor, whatever it is. ZocDoc has you covered. Go to ZocDoc.com/majority. You download the ZocDoc app. You sign in for free. Every month, millions of people use ZocDoc, including
me.
Emma and Bradley. You've used it, right? Matt,
I found my dentist here in Brooklyn with ZocDoc, and she was great, and she did my fillings really well.
There you go.
A few weeks ago.
Super easy. Plug in your insurance, and you know that you're going to the right person.
Replacement fillings. My mouth is clean.
All right. I mean, when people get cavities, you don't have to feel...
Well, I have like internalized childhood shame about it.
All right. That's weird. Anyways, maybe find a psychiatrist on ZocDoc too.
Probably.
Anyway, ZocDoc makes healthcare easy. Now is the time to prioritize your health. Go to ZocDoc.com/majority. Download the ZocDoc app, sign up for free, and book a top-rated doctor. Many are available as soon as today. Do it, folks. That's ZocDoc, ZocDoc.com/majority. Also, today's sponsor, Emma's favorite, Tushy.
I think it's Hello Tushy, right?
Well, it's Hello
I'm
Tushy.
a Tushy lady.
Hello Tushy is the site, but it's Tushy. It's the modern bidet that attaches directly to your toilet in under 10 minutes. Super easy to connect. It has been a game changer for many people. We had an IM the other day. Someone said, like, I'm ruined now when I go into work and if I have to go. Because at home I have a Tushy, and at work I don't. Tushy is the modern bidet for people who poop, which is, as far as I know, just about everybody. Well, not everybody.
Not Kim Jong-un.
No. Just poo, wash, pat dry. Tushy bidet washes your bum with water, which is obviously a better clean than toilet paper. Less irritating, more soothing, and cleaner. The Tushy bidet is easy to install. Like I say, it attaches to the toilet in under 10 minutes. No electricity or plumbing needed. Using a Tushy bidet reduces your toilet paper by 80%, saving you money. It is eco-friendly and it is stylish. Start washing with a Tushy bidet for a better clean. Go to HelloTushy.com. That's HelloTushy.com/majority to get 10% off plus free shipping. This is a special offer for our listeners at HelloTushy.com/majority for 10% off. After you buy and install your Tushy, show it off. You tag at HelloTushy on Instagram. Lastly, I lean on this. I've been leaning on this quite a bit lately. 1 stick of liquid IV and 16 ounces of water will hydrate you faster and more efficiently than water alone. I know why it is, because I had that... I had some food poisoning, and the one thing everybody tells you, stay hydrated. And I'm like, I'm good. I am good on that. We got a lot of liquid IV in this office, a ton.
Yes, I used it yesterday.
I'm drinking some right now. I had the matcha And I moved on to the tangerine,
I saw some
which
pina
has
colada stored over there.
I got the pina colada, of course. That's my go-to.
A hidden spot, I must say.
Well, I don't want anybody taking my pina colada. The big news is we got a water cooler in the office now, and so everything has changed.
Time to dump all the liquid IV into it.
Well, we wouldn't do that. But liquid IV tastes great. Other flavors, watermelon, strawberry, lemon lime. Sounds a little bit like summer. Pina colada sounds like summer, too. I don't know why they don't promote that. I think I might be fairly unique in that respect, but I love it. Liquid IV contains 5 essential items, more vitamin C than an orange, and as much potassium as a banana. It is healthier than sugary sports drinks. There are no artificial flavors, no preservatives, less sugar than an apple. Liquid IV is powered by cellular transport technology. It has the optimal ratio of glucose, sodium, and potassium, delivers water and nutrients into the bloodstream. The company has donated over 4 million servings in response to COVID-19. Products are being donated to hospitals, first responders, food banks, and more. Folks, you're traveling, if you've overindulged, if you're not feeling well, or you just want to stay hydrated. And frankly, this is, for me, it's more than a daily thing. I mean, I've got the matcha and the tangerine immunity boosters going right now. You can grab your Liquid IV in bulk nationwide at Costco, or you can get 25% off when you go to liquidiv.com and use the code MajorityRep at checkout. MajorityRep. It's 25% off anything you order when you get better hydration today using the promo code MajorityRep at liquidiv.com. Okay, I want to welcome back to the program co-founder of the Debt Collective, author of Remake the World, Essays, Reflections, and Rebellions, Astra Taylor on Occupy Wall Street. Astra, welcome back to the show. I'm here with Emma Vigeland.
Hey, thanks again for having me.
So, I was digging around a little bit in some of our audio footage. We went down there on the 17th, I think it was, which was, if I remember correctly, it was a Friday, but it was raining in the morning a little bit, and I had some big contraption that I was trying to broadcast from. We ended up getting reports from the 19th, but what are your thoughts looking back? Like, when did you I know you got there sort of like as it was just sort of becoming an occupation on some level. Just give us a sense of like how it developed and what your recollection of those first days were.
Yeah, Occupy Wall Street was something I first heard about in August. I got an email from my friend, the late great anthropologist David Graeber, basically saying, hey, some activist geeks are meeting. We're having regular assemblies. They were calling themselves New York General Assembly, and plotting an occupation of Wall Street. And they were responding to a call issued by Adbusters, the Canadian magazine, that was pretty bold. It was basically, come to Wall Street September 17th, bring tents, stay for months, 20,000 people, And the people who were having these assemblies leading up to that were much more humble. They had broken into different working groups, comms, like sort of tactical, figuring out what the different areas were. They found Zuccotti Park, which was their third choice for a place to camp out. And they actually had a demands working group, but they were skeptical they'd even be able to stay the night because of the police presence in New York. So that first day, I joined with everyone at Bowling Green. The police had basically shut down Wall Street. I mean, it was a police zone in there, but they hadn't cordoned off Zuccotti. And I remember marching north and in a pretty orderly fashion and saying to a young man on my right, where are we going? And he said, Zucchini Park. None of us knew of this place, and we got there and it was sort of perfect because it's on Broadway. Its east side is on Broadway, but it's also quite private. And there are all of these sort of planters that you could sit on. And people just started talking. We broke into little groups, small general assemblies with about 20 people. And we talked about why we were there, what our demands would be if we made them, and what we were going to do about the crisis of democracy that we were in. You know, the fact that 3 years ago, it had been 3 years since the financial crisis, and no bankers were being paraded in handcuffs, right? In fact, they were being brought into the Obama administration. And it was very striking to me. I mean, you've had me on the show about the work I do. I'm kind of a nerd. So the fact that we weren't standing at the New York Stock Exchange screaming, but we're actually sitting and talking and planning to be there for a while was really powerful. And I think that feeling of assembling with others, taking space, realizing other people were mad and wanted to do something was addictive. And that's why so many of us stuck with Occupy Wall Street, even though, yeah, you're right, the weather was terrible. There weren't really that many people the first day. I mean, it wasn't, I didn't think, wow, this is it. This is the revolution. But there was something about it that made me stick with it. And so many other people did as well.
Yeah, it was fascinating. And it was, relatively quickly, there was, I'm trying to get my bearings straight, but as you come into the park, I think it was from Broadway, like on the right, very quickly there was like a library that was started, and
Yes.
there was a sort of commissary, and there was a comms area where, and there became like, security, and I mean there was all sorts of, there was sort of like two different sort of concurrent agendas. One was like the physicality of the place, and then one was sort of like the agenda of the place that was going, that were sort of commingled, but also sort of distinct endeavors.
I think that's really true. And I think that's part of what was so powerful about it. It was both sort of the political, philosophical point we were making that a lot of people at the time said, oh, Occupy, it doesn't have clear demands. I mean, the demand was obvious. We were a big middle finger at the center of Wall Street, at the center of global capitalism, in the middle of an economic crisis, the greatest crisis since the Great Depression. I mean, you had to be willfully obtuse. But it also reflected being a total naivete about how politics worked. People forget this, but there had been an encampment called Bloombergville in May that lasted a few weeks, that was in Wall Street, never kind of captured the public's imagination. And there was a massive demonstration in May that I attended that was 10, 20,000 people with very clearly enumerated demands. They didn't win just because they had demands, right? Occupy in a way protested everything. It was saying the whole system is broken. We need to revitalize, reinvent democracy. We need to make the 99%, we need to make the 99% feel empowered. So there was that stuff, but then it was, so there are these philosophical aspects, but you're right. It was absolutely about bodies in space, and also bringing back an age of defiant protest. They didn't, the planners for the occupation did not go and get a permit. At that point in New York City, and I'm not sure what the laws are now, it was illegal for 20 people to gather without a permit. So it was an illegal gathering, an illegal occupation from the start. And that was really important because it was 10 years of the war on terror, this kind of real suppression of protest. If I was very skeptical we'd be able to make it through the night because, I was so used to being kettled by the police and put in a free speech pen. And so there was those two things together, which was a kind of philosophical, political message, and then the embodiment of it, right? So theory and practice really together. And that was part of what was so powerful. You'd go to the People's Library and get a book and read, or go to a working group and learn about finance. And then you'd go march to Wall Street for the opening and closing bell at the New York Stock Exchange.
And we should say, I went back and listened to at least, the interviews that we did. I think the first interview that we did from Zuccotti, which was Monday the 19th, and maybe we'll play a little bit in the fun half. But one of the things that struck me was it was someone from comms, and they were saying that people had been arrested for having masks at that time, and I mean this was. I don't know that the NYPD is, and maybe in some respects it's even more aggressive now, in more like almost than it was then. But there was they were really trying to arrest people. I mean, they were trying to figure out what to do here, and they were really nervous about going into Zuccotti in some respects. And what do you think accounted for that? I mean, it took them a while to realize, like, maybe they thought it was going to peter out. But to me, the physical presence was so, well, ultimately in retrospect, I think it became even clearer. But at the moment, like, the physical presence that they were there was so important because you didn't need to create new events to get the news going. It was just sort of like, it was happening. They're not going away. And it was almost like they weren't stopping traffic really, but they were clogging the normalcy of that area. And that's what compelled, I think, a lot of the coverage, and also just sort of like the commitment that it showed.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Why didn't they clear out Zuccotti Park that first night when they could have? And a friend reports seeing a kind of black SUV. Nathan Schneider, who was a kind of participant journalist, wrote a great book called Thank You, Anarchy about this. And the guy, basically, I think you're right. They thought it was going to fizzle out. And that was a mistake because it didn't. It was a very obstinate movement. But the police, were hostile right after that. And it radicalized a lot of people to see that police violence. And there's all sorts of instances that, we remember. There's the pepper spraying of 2 young women a week into Occupy Wall Street, very up close, very violent. And that footage was circulated by people and also through the anonymous networks online, which were like a big part of the political and online discourse and scene back then. And so those images really outraged people and just pushed the public sentiment on the side of the protesters. And yeah, it was illegal to wear masks. Everybody was wearing those Guy Fawkes, like, anonymous masks at the time. But the police violence, which was not just in New York City, Occupy sprang up. And I'm trying to get a solid count, but in New York Daily News, I found had a piece that said something like 2,200 occupations at one point. They were also victims.
Not just in the States, we should say. It was in very small places. I personally was in towns with 5,000-6,000 people who had an Occupy encampment. I knew there was one in Worcester, which is a bigger city. They were across the country.
Yeah, and around the world. I visited Occupy Dublin one afternoon. At a certain point, there was, Occupy London. And I think, people responded because, the way I described it is Occupy broke the spell. There was this economic consensus, this bipartisan consensus that the market was it. There was nothing beyond the market. It was Bill Clinton who had repealed Glass-Steagall, which was the Depression era reform that had separated investment from sort of commercial banking, and they scoffed if you dared to question their reality, a reality that was causing such damage. The financial crisis had evaporated trillions of dollars overnight, decimated over 50% of the wealth of Black families, over 60% of the wealth of Latin families, Latino families. And so it's just like, people were like, this isn't working, and that's why you had these Occupies spring up everywhere. And, it really, I think it's hard to remember today how significant that was because we're used to protest. We're used to people talking about class. We're used to people saying inequality is bad. Now, it's gotten worse. Things have objectively, materially gotten a lot worse since then. The banking sector emerged stronger than ever because of the Obama administration's policies. But in terms of us being able to speak the truth, so we have a chance of building power to address these issues, I think we're on really different political terrain.
To me, it was a huge pivot point. Having, just done some iteration of this 7-8 years, I guess, prior to Occupy and the 10 years since, there was such a radical change in terms of the way that people identified themselves, the way that they spoke about what you're talking about. Introducing concepts like neoliberalism and people referring to themselves as socialists, and it really seems to have waned on some level, at least in terms of the place it. But the 2016 run of Bernie Sanders, you could draw a direct line to the rhetoric and the ideas that came out of Occupy there. But we should also say too, there was a mix of ideologies that were there. That there was a lot of anti-establishment, but for different reasons, I think. And some of that has become sort of clearer, right? There are people who were who were at Occupy, who have gone in many different directions. Talk a little bit about that, because I think that was both a strength. Well, I don't know if it was a weakness, but it was a strength of Occupy in that a lot of people were able to project onto it what they wanted to, without that seemingly being things getting too stratified, I think, there.
Yeah, it's interesting. My thinking on this has evolved a bit because, it's the benefit of hindsight and the fact that I've been organizing. I mean, I think first for me, what Occupy did, and I know it did for so many others, is I felt so alone, right? I was so atomized. There wasn't a left to really join. I mean, why would I join I might have been a socialist, but the groups just felt so marginal. They were, selling these papers in the corner of a park, or not Zuccotti Park, but it felt like, it just felt the left was so demoralized and so marginal at that point. And so, a lot of tendencies flocked to that. And on the one hand, that was the capaciousness of the call, right? Anyone could come to Occupy Wall Street. It was open. It was small d, radically democratic. And the 99% is incredibly open, right? It's saying, everyone but the 1% can be here. And I actually think that was really powerful. And it did have contradictions. Its openness also led to conflict and some chaos. I mean, Occupy also didn't have any traditional structure. It rejected the idea of leadership. And what that did was allow us to be full participants and bring our full selves and be creative and come up with ideas. For us, for me, it was a lot of ideas around organizing around debt and how to politicize debt. But there were all sorts of offshoots. And so, the openness was generative, and then it became a bit of a liability in ways. And so I think what's interesting is how people are still navigating those contradictions and tensions. And so there was definitely, I was on the side then that was like, I want to be a part of a left that's more disciplined and more strategic and more organized. But that space for people to be actors and not just like bodies showing up at a march who then are told to go home, I think is really powerful. And that's why the socialism that we see today is small d democratic socialism, right? It is trying to continue that. What was the core rallying cry of Occupy Wall Street and the movements around the world in 2011, which was about democracy, right? We want to be able to be political actors, to have a say in the decisions that affect our lives, to not be living under an oligarchy, right? To not be living under a system where only money has a voice.
Well, there's something to be said, too, about the agency that gives for all of the people participating in Occupy. I had this conversation with Dave Zirin the other day about talking about Kaepernick, actually, yesterday, and how he initially was sitting on the bench to protest, but then he took the knee, and it was an active choice that other high school students, college students could participate in, because it creates an act, and that in and of itself just like amplifies the activism, because you are doing something active in a way. And I mean, I think that might have contributed to the poignancy of Occupy long term.
I think those things that are immediately replicable, that people identify, right? So people also understood, just like people know what taking the knee means and how to do it, Occupy gave people these symbols and these actions. So you go to a space, you have a general assembly, you start a library, you start a food distribution network, and it was just enough to get people started where they felt connected to what was happening in New York and to other places, but they also felt that they could then adjust for their communities. And, I think one tragedy is there's never been a full accounting or even a partial one of all of the efforts that were spawned in these local occupies. I mean, I've heard stories of them, right? That this one went on to defend a homeless shelter, and this one, Athens, Georgia, where I'm from, Occupy basically led to a transformation of the city council. I mean, there's all of these ways that those groups allowed people to take that first step of finding each other, and then they kept organizing in some way. And I think that's actually, a critical thing. But it was those basic building blocks that people could take on and then iterate themselves that I think was part of Occupy's magic.
It would be fascinating to have an accounting of all the things that sort of came out of there, and some of which not great, frankly. There were people there who have gone on to just sort of like twisted their anti-establishment, ideology, and it's turned into sort of, I think, reactionary stuff, frankly. But there was so many both institutional movements and sort of more, sunrise movement, and, down to like local advocacy groups or, people fighting for clean water in Detroit and whatnot. I mean, the breadth of all that. All right, let's just talk about one more thing, like the space, because when it ultimately, in New York, when the cops came in there, and I think they came in with like the LRADs, which was the sort of the audio cannons, and they drove everybody from the park, and they did this at like 2 a.m. And in fact, I think it was like on the night of the morning of the 15th, because it just so happened it was our anniversary show, and we did like a 24-hour show or 12-hour show that day. So we had people as they were marching call in, and we had people talking about it. The loss of the space really ended up like dispersing everybody, literally, and the energy, it felt like.
Yeah, that was, so there had been a previous attempt to oust people from the park. And Mayor Bloomberg, whose girlfriend at the time, I have no idea, I doubt they're still together, was actually on the board of Brookfield Properties, which was the company that owned Zuccotti Park, which was like a public-private park, which is why it was open 24 hours. So by this quirk of ownership, Zuccotti didn't close like most New York City public parks. So he said, in this condescending way that also implied we were a bunch of dirty hippies who needed to get jobs, that the park needed to be cleaned. Right. And so a lot of unions, made calls, and, Occupy sent out through their networks, and Anonymous, and 6,000 New Yorkers came at dawn and defended Zuccotti Park. So, Bloomberg was rebuffed in a big way once, but then they did the late night raid. I wasn't in the park at the time, but I came the minute that a text alert was sent. And it was, a militarized raid on this movement, on a nonviolent movement. And they just, in addition to what you described, they had these garbage trucks and just everything in the trash, and helicopters flying above. And it was symbolic to me at the time of just what a threat this was, what a threat they found Zuccotti Park to be. And in fact, there was a coordinated crackdown. Mayors had these emergency phone calls, and they were backed up by Homeland Security and backed up by the FBI. If
I remember correctly now, yes, yeah. Back to me. They had all.
Yeah, and so these, multiple cities had these crackdowns at the same time. Now, some of these small occupies stayed together for months and managed to hold out, but the sort of big symbolic ones were ousted. And so it was a bit of an identity crisis for Occupy Wall Street. And I think some people really wanted to hold another space. There were campaigns to find another encampment. And I was of the opinion that was mistaking a tactic, which is occupying, for the goal of the movement, which was the goals of the movement were to transform the broader society. So a lot of us had been thinking this was, a lot of us, not like in a small group, but a lot of people who were involved were thinking that this was going to happen. And people were already moving into neighborhoods, occupying and defending foreclosed homes. We were moving forward with our work around debt. And one way we thought about it was that how does Wall Street occupy our lives? Well, through these financial obligations, through the debts we owe them, right? So Wall Street is everywhere. It's not just at Zuccotti Park. We need to think about finance in a bigger way. But, what it did was people had to then reckon with what had transpired there and how to build out of the ashes of it, right? Because the point was never to camp indefinitely. The point was to challenge the 1%.
So, lastly, and obviously, everybody who were involved at the level that you were involved in this, and we should say, like, some of the best sort of like the financial regulation, I can't remember what the name of the committee was, but they
Occupy the SEC.
Occupy the SEC. They generated what I think is fairly uncontroversially considered the best document in terms of, when the government was looking at creating Dodd-Frank, like the most comprehensive, thoughtful document that was generated in support of financial regulation going forward. So there's a lot of like just incredible work that was products that it existed on. But what do you think needs to happen with that hindsight now, to move things forward? Because in my sense is that things have stalled a little bit, and in part because, you get Donald Trump and there is a natural tendency to be like, we need to stabilize things, and people's ambitions diminish, which I think is, it's certainly a predictable reaction. I don't know if it's a legitimate one, but it's certainly a predictable one. I mean, and what is your sense of where, if you had the ability to generate something that, just snap your fingers, what would it look like?
I think Occupy was what it had to be for the time. It manifested again because the left was so disorganized. I mean, the left, and sometimes of its own, because of it deserves the blame, but also because of years of suppression, years of sabotage. This is what I talked about with Emma in the last interview, and so, knowing the people who were part of the planning committee for September 17th, it seems ridiculous to me to say Occupy failed. Those people should have changed the world and brought, a true egalitarian democracy to the United States. If somebody failed in that moment, it wasn't the occupiers, it was the political establishment, specifically the Democratic establishment, that ignored the writing on the wall. Occupy was this warning of this populist discontent, right? It was a symptom of a crisis of political legitimacy, again, because there had been this, bipartisan move, bipartisan decisions and this market logic that had gotten us into this crisis. So I really think the political establishment failed yet again. We're in a much worse state. But then the onus is on us to organize, and to organize in a smarter way, in a more strategic way. And, I do think Occupy created a space for people to start thinking about power more strategically, to start thinking about how you have an organization that is sustaining, that is impactful, that brings people into a multi-phase, multi-year strategy, but that is still small d democratic, that also harnesses people's creativity and capacities. And we're having to build a lot of that infrastructure, from scratch. And so you highlighted the Sunrise Movement. A lot of the kids who founded that were part of Occupy, were inspired by it, but also wanted to not repeat some of its failures and foibles. And so I think, we need to keep being serious about power. One thing I do think we can learn from Occupy, though, as the left gets more robust and as people start to be more open about their socialist politics and their positions, is that we actually still need to keep welcoming people. So that's where the 99%, I think, is powerful. Some of our policies might be popular, but that doesn't mean we have a majority of people actually organized and in movements and ready to fight for them. And so we have to keep, even if it can get really messy, and even if it means that some of the people we're working with aren't, maybe as astute politically or something like that, that's what it takes to win, is bringing majorities on board. And so that, I think, is something that I look back on and think was one of the most powerful attributes of that movement. But yeah, I'm always about power strategy. We can't cede any terrain. I think people are getting better about engaging with electoral politics without feeling the only outcome is going to be co-option, right? But we can actually shift the balance of power, So we're learning. The left is learning. We have to keep doing it. And you're right, there is a bit of a lag. I would also like to see, as the co-founder of the Debt Collective, attention on finance. That was a part of the thing about Wall Street. Thinking, really critically about the economy and what lever points we might have. That's one area I'd like to see more attention paid to on the left.
Well, Astra Taylor, folks can check out your New York Magazine piece with Jonathan Smucker, Occupy Wall Street Changed Everything. People will put a link to that at majority.fm, and of course your book as well. Astra Taylor, thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks, Astra.
All right, we're going to take just a quick break, and when we come back, we'll be talking to Heather Parton, or you may know her as Digby. We are back, ladies and gentlemen, and our next guest needs no introduction, but we have one anyways.
She'll get one.
Yes, and it's musical. It's been a while.
Are you ready for some yeah? And a bit of hullabaloo. A bit of hullabaloo should do ya. How about some hullabaloo?
I feel like this musical style has come back in now. Right?
I need my own sitcom with that.
I know. Did you know?
Awesome! I love it.
On this day in 1965, I was listening to the radio and I heard that Ford introduced the option of 8-track tapes at this time. And so,
Damn, really choosing to age yourself on the program.
Well, I wasn't yet alive actually, but I do remember 8-track tapes. I
was, and I remember 8-track tapes. I didn't realize they came out that early because it was the 70s when they really took off.
The 8-tracks, early 70s. I remember. I remember those. You could get. I had some as a kid.
So did I.
But that's not why you're here, Heather. I want to welcome Heather Parton to the program. You may know her as Digby from her blog, The Hullabaloo, or the song that we just played.
It really is.
And of course,
like just such a great song. It makes me feel happy and relaxed all at once.
Me too.
There you go. So, all right, Heather, let's look back on this week. You know, California, you're in California. That was a big victory. I want to say for Gavin Newsom, but it really was a victory against the recall, right?
That's how I see it. And I do give Newsom and his team credit too for taking a really aggressive stance against the undemocratic nature of what they were doing. Now it's true that recalls are constitutional in California, and they have them in states all over the country, but California's is particularly sort of badly formatted, and it comes from back in 1910 when they did a bunch of progressive reforms to root out corruption in state government, all of which is a great idea, but it's ended up having some very sort of destructive consequences over the years, including the initiative process in general has been quite destructive in certain ways. Things like Proposition 13, which destroyed the tax base of the state, back in the 70s. And this recall, they've tried to recall every governor practically. I think I read somewhere since 1960 that there's been some kind of a recall movement of every governor. But until 2003, when Schwarzenegger successfully, when they recalled Gray Davis and Schwarzenegger was successfully replaced him, that's the first time it worked. And it's the first time they actually got enough signatures to do on the ballot. Now, obviously Republicans are in this new anti-democratic mode across the country in as many ways as they can, right? I mean, this is the whole big lie organizing principle of the party now, which is just they are doing everything they can to try and suppress votes, change the electoral system, put, hacks and cronies into positions of power in the electoral system. So this actually sort of fell into that basket, despite the fact that we did do this in California back in 2003. The pandemic allowed them several extra months. A judge said, because of the pandemic, you can gather signatures for 4 extra months, which is really what gave them the ability to do it. And I think also this idea that Republicans in the state, a minority, that's only about a third of the state is registered Republican, that they're in this mood, right? They're in this mode. Come on, we're gonna win by any means necessary. And I think they were sort of agitated and got into it. And as a result, we had this recall election that was really absurd, right? I mean, Gavin Newsom's up for re-election next year.
Right.
I mean, everybody could wait a year, right? I mean, if you want to take the guy out, do it the normal way, right? I mean, and instead they spent a bunch of money, upwards of $300 million to do this silly thing. But Newsom, I think very wisely, and I think his people recognizing that they were going to have to galvanize the Democratic base to come out, because, you know, everybody's going, what election? You know, nobody even knew. They nationalized the race, and they nationalized it in a really smart way. And they went after it as a consequence of Trumpism, anti-democratic, COVID mitigation. You know, they went right into the heart of everything, all the things that Republicans are doing around the country, including here in California, and just basically aggressively just attacked it. And, you know, Larry Elder, the primary, front runner of the 46 people that were running, he made a good foil because he was actually a Trumper. He's a guy who's, you know, been very much on that kind of undemocratic tack, and very, very right wing and extreme in many ways. So once he became a front runner, that helped as well, and they tied him to Trump. So I think that despite the fact that I wasn't ever really worried that this was going to happen. I mean, I guess if California had really been in deep, deep trouble, maybe it could have happened, but it actually isn't. California's come through the pandemic as well as anybody, and it's a big state, highly diverse, very difficult to do something like get vaccines to everybody in the country because it's 40 million people. I mean, it's a huge population, and Newsom and the rest of the state have done pretty well. The economy has suffered the same way all economies in the country suffered from COVID, but the state has a huge surplus, and, you know, Newsom is doling out, you know, actual cash and money to people. He's making some progressive changes. We have a supermajority in the state legislature. I just don't think that people were that unhappy with the political leadership. There's plenty to be unhappy about in the culture. Homelessness is a horrible problem. Real estate prices are absolutely out of control. There's plenty to be unhappy about, but I didn't get the sense ever that people were blaming Gavin Newsom for this in general. So I never thought that with this state being a 2/3 majority Democratic state, that if they could get the turnout, that there would be any problem. But, you know, what this showed was that there is a way to turn out people.
Well, that to me is the entire thing, right? It's turnout, right? Because we're looking at a midterm election, which to lose both chambers or even one, I mean, certainly I would be terrified about losing the Senate. More than I would even the House at this point. I mean, because judges, right? I mean, we know like that's, you know, at the very least you can do judges, and Biden administration's actually, you know, relatively speaking, doing well on this. But this is, I mean, the question of turnout is really, it seems to me, the big issue, and coming on that, and this is something that you and I have talked about for months now, about running against Donald Trump, and the idea that Democrats have for the first time, and I don't want to credit them too much because it's fairly obvious, right? I mean, this is like just sort of...
He did a lot of the work for himself.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, the guy's like, he's like basically standing in middle of the road. You're not going to give the Democrats that much credit for hitting him. It's just, he's in the middle of the road. You can't miss him. But they're able to run against something. They're able to do negative partisanship. Not everybody seems to understand this. I want to just play these two clips for you. And, you know, Terry McAuliffe, I would have imagined he was going to be a much worse governor of Virginia than he was when he was. Let's put it that way. So, you know, credit where credit's due. But this I also give him credit for. Here, listen to Terry McAuliffe. And this is what I find at least encouraging, that they're like a pack of dogs, and if one of them starts barking in the right way, they all start barking in this way, and that's good in terms of outcomes. Here is Terry McAuliffe in his gubernatorial debate on Thursday in Virginia against Glenn Youngkin.
It's working together on these big issues why so many Republicans have actually endorsed me. Former delegates, Bill Kristol, one of the most conservative writers in America. Why? Terry has the experience of getting this done. And that's what we need here in Virginia, because we've got tough times ahead. And we can't go with a candidate who is too extreme. He's a Trump wannabe. He's endorsed by Donald Trump 3 times. He said he was honored to have his endorsement. He wants to ban abortions here in Virginia. The #1 issue he talked about the entire campaign was election integrity. The big issue I'm talking about are jobs, economic development. That's how you grow, investing in education, lifting up health care. He's gone as far to say that so much of the reason I'm running is because of Donald Trump. Well, let me be clear to all you in Virginia.
Thank you, Mr.
I'm
McCullough.
running for you.
Okay. So he says Donald Trump's name 3 times in the course of 50 seconds. And it's Trump, abortion, and the big lie, which is another way of saying Trump, right? And so he gets who he's running against. And, you know, it's all negative partisanship. Yet, you know, there is that like Bill Kristol pablum. And I you know, but here is Nancy Pelosi. And I don't know how much Nancy Pelosi is going to impact what's running, you know, who's running in the House and how they're running. Here she is in the Chatham House in London. I mean, I don't know why she's in London.
Chatham House in London.
Here she is continuing this sort of like thinking that even 10 years ago, I felt like it was inappropriate, but never mind today. Here it is.
I'd say to my Republican friends, and I do have some, take back your party. You're the grand old party of America. You've done wonderful things for our country. You've now been hijacked by a cult that is just not good for our country. Take back your party. Do not let it be dominated by those who want to suppress the vote because they have no positive message to win.
Okay, all right.
She does this once a month.
But even
once a month,
even those guys who I consider charlatans in the Lincoln Project are out there saying that's over. There is no cult in the Republican Party that's controlling the Republican Party. There is no cohort of people who can take back the party. That doesn't exist. That whole the party is that cult. You know, there are marginal people in everything, but they're not big enough to take back the party. There is no they there.
Oh, you're absolutely right. I don't really understand that. I mean, it's like it's like the old, remember they used to talk all the time about Tip and Ronnie and how Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan, they used to fight like hell all day long, and then they'd get together and drink scotch on the Truman balcony or some such nonsense. There's always this kind of, you know, this desire on the part of the political establishment to pretend that somehow this is all some kind of a kabuki dance if everybody would just, you know, get to just, you know, not be so angry and upset at one another. And, you know, what that leads to is the idea that, you know, that the voters, what they love is bipartisanship. And of course, voters say that in polling, in focus groups and polling. They always ask, you know, do you like bipartisanship? Oh, I love bipartisanship. We want more bipartisanship. And by the way, Democrats tend to say that more than Republicans do, who have been much more indoctrinated into the idea that they're in a political fight than Democrats have because of things like Nancy Pelosi says, you know, oh, it's not a real political fight. So they think, oh, bipartisanship is really what we want. That's not what they mean. What they want is they want their agenda to pass and they want the other side to be okay with that. That's bipartisanship, right? Both sides want that. When in reality, it's what you just said earlier. It's negative partisanship is the defining characteristic of our political era. It's tough. It's unpleasant in many ways. It's scary and dangerous, but it is what it is. And I think Gavin Newsom understood that. Terry McAuliffe understands it. I'm not sure that the political establishment understands.
All right. Well, listen, we have to say goodbye to our Peacock viewers. For those of us watching us everywhere else, we want to hold you over, Heather, into the second half of the program. So for our Peacock viewers,
have a wonderful weekend.
Yes, and we'll see you on Monday. All right. So
Back to brass tacks.
Now that those people are gone, we can really talk about this stuff. It is so infuriating. I mean, and that's why, like, I got to say, like, I'm encouraged that Biden went to California and said this. I mean, this is all from just an electoral standpoint, but and so, you know, we'll see. I think, like, you know, what, like I say, once, like, the consultant class, you know, land on something, a broken clock can be can be right twice a day. And so the maintaining these majorities as and we're about to pivot into the limitations of these majorities, is pretty important in my mind. All right, let's talk about the majorities as we're watching this infrastructure bill essentially being dismantled in front of our eyes. Stephanie Murphy, who are the other two on this committee that basically crushed the prescription drug bill in committee?
Yeah. I mean, well, it came out in a tie in the vote, right? Is that correct?
Is that what it was?
Yeah, and so it's temporarily nixed, but it's not dead. And especially because I think it would be $700 billion in the pay-fors that this kind of Democrat is exactly primed to accept and think is very, very excellent.
Kurt Schrader of Oregon, Scott Peters of California, Kathleen Rice.
That's Kathleen Rice is the one who narrowly defeated Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez for this very committee seat.
Right.
And that was because leadership interfered or tipped the scales or made their preference known, etc. And so, like, you know, sometimes we'll have these conversations with other people on the left about, oh, committee seats, who gives a crap, right? That doesn't matter. No, this is why that matters. Like, that kind of voice versus Kathleen Rice would have made an enormous difference here.
Where is Nancy Pelosi? Oh, I know where she is. She's in England.
She's at the Chatham.
I'm sorry. She's at the Chatham House talking about how she has Republican friends. I mean, why isn't she back in Washington essentially saying, Kathleen, right now in New York Democrats are deciding what seats are not going to exist. I don't know if it's possible for your seat not to exist, but it's possible. Or at the very least, we can make your seat in such a way that, like, you know, you're going to have a primary candidate, challenger. Like, where is this hardball for these people? Like, this is, and if she, you know, like, look, there's two answers. One is, like, she's feckless, which I find hard to believe. The other is that she doesn't really care about this stuff. And I guess, you know, the point is like, I am now in a position where I am rooting for the progressives to sink all of it. Like, no bipartisan infrastructure bill. Like, really sink, you know, like that's where this seems to be headed, it seems to me. And this has got to be on Pelosi and the conservative corporate wing of the party.
Well, I'm not quite there with you yet. I feel as if we're watching, you know, they always call it sausage making or whatever. And I don't actually feel like I don't have a firm grasp on where this is or where it's going. My suspicion is, and I think I told you this before, I think we talked about this last time I was on. My suspicion is that the 3.5, and part of this is because I sort of trust Bernie Sanders on this, and he seems to be a little bit more sanguine than I might expect him to be. I mean, there's always a kabuki dance going on when they're doing these big negotiations. I mean, remember in Obamacare, it went on for months and months. I mean, it was unbelievable. In a big package like this, it's that's so hugely consequential. Everybody plays these different roles, and you just don't know how much of it is kabuki and how much of it is real, other than people like Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema and Kathleen Rice. Those people, I think, are playing roles very, very sincerely, trying to, you know, destroy the good parts of the bill. I mean, that's obvious to me. The rest of it, I'm not so sure of about Pelosi and the rest. But one thing I do think is that, Bernie Sanders, we know for a fact that this 3.5 trillion number isn't real. That number is the cost. Chris Hayes was talking about this on his show last week. 3.5 trillion is the cost, but they've got all these other, they've got tax hikes in there. They've got this drug bill. There's a lot of things that are in there that also raises revenue in other ways. So it's not 3.5 trillion, it's substantially less. So that's a number that was put out there and very ostentatiously put out there by Bernie and various other people that, you don't, maybe he's out there going, look how much money we're spending, but I honestly don't think that was the point. It strikes me as possible, and maybe I'm wrong here, but that number was put out there for the actual purpose of allowing people like Manchin and Sinema and Rice and others to be able to say that they whittled it down to the number that it actually is. And that when you start looking at this, and this is all very arcane kind of, we don't know what the CBO is going to say and parliamentarians going to weigh in and all that stuff. So I'm just putting that out there as my hopeful, optimistic take that there's more here than what we see, which is that the corporate Democrats are basically going to destroy everything good in the bill, and it's going to end up being one of those things where they say to the progressives, well, what about the child tax credit? How can you possibly vote against that? Right. Even though they've lost everything else in the bill, which is always the threat and the hostage taking with progressives. It's what happened with Obamacare. The main reason why the progressives gave up that fight, and they were in the same position as you just described now, we're going to take down the bill. People came to them and said, look at the Medicaid expansion. You cannot vote against that. You'll never have another chance to expand Medicaid for poor people. And the progressives sort of gritted their teeth and went along. So here we are again in that same situation. I am just hopeful, that there's more to this. Would you have Bernie Sanders as the head of the budget committee? You have, other progressives much, much stronger than they were in 2009 and 2010 in the House, with a big coalition that actually has some real clout and some people leading it that are saying, hey, we're not going to fall for your crap again. I'm just hopeful that they have gamed this out enough to avoid that situation again. But again, I don't know. And it's intensely frustrating because just on a political basis, having the fight this way is destructive.
Absolutely.
Because you see a Kathleen Rice come in and make her big, or Manchin walk around going, oh, they're these, the hippies are spending too much money again, the socialists are taking over. All that does is feed into this radical right critique of the Democrats. They don't, I don't know who they think they're helping here, except I think
themselves.
We know that they're helping, their big money donors.
All right, let me just sort of just on that $3.5 trillion number. The point being that if you raise $2 trillion in taxes or in savings, that the expenditure of new money, I guess, or is only 1.5 trillion, just as an example. But in fact, the resolution says you can borrow up to $1.7 trillion. That's the organizing resolution of the reconciliation bill, without getting too arcane, I guess, in the process. But really, ultimately, it's what we're talking about redistribution. We're talking about redistributing money. So it doesn't, the whether it is, money that is borrowed, which I suppose one could argue would have more of a stimulative effect in some level, but it's not like we need the economy to be stimulated. The economy is fairly well stimulated, it seems to me, to the extent that it can be with COVID. I would like to see, expansion of unemployment and et cetera, et cetera. But that, again, if you have $3.5 trillion worth of taxes or savings or whatnot, it's really just a question of redistribution. And it seems to me that, we are watching that redistribution be attacked. The the prescription drug bill thing is really is a big issue because it's $600 billion. I think Emma made the point of, or $700 billion of where the funding for the other things are going to come. And, you know, you're attacking drug makers. You're taking from them. You're also, when you use that money to provide Medicare coverage of, let's say, dental, you're pissing off the dentists because they're like, hey, wait a second. I'm used to this 65 and older crowd coming in and, you know, doing the porcelain veneers and doing all this stuff. And I make a lot of money that way. And if Medicare comes in and says like, hey, wait a second, with all due respect to the dentist too, like I have some real questions about, you know, what is and is not necessary with some of that dental stuff.
Oh yeah.
But Medicare is going to come in and basically is going to be like, you're not making as much. And you know, or we're not covering stuff. You know, people are going to have to go out of pocket, and we're not covering stuff in the same way. And
but I don't get that. People are going out of pocket completely now. So I mean, you know, it seems to me like dentists will make more money in the long run because more people who don't get any dental care at all will come in and just get the subsistence Medicare money, right? The rest of the people are going to get their veneers and their implants and their Invisalign and whatever.
You don't make the money with subsistence. That's the point.
I think people still do whatever. I mean,
there's only so much.
Normal.
I mean, I guess that maybe they have like their hygienists. I don't know. I'm convinced that the providers, well, whether they're going to make more money or not is secondary to whether they perceive they're going to make more money.
Exactly.
And so I don't know the answer to the first question, but I do know the answer to the second question. They think they're going to get paid less, and so it's enraging to watch these moderates be able to do this without, like, where are the stories about the, you know, Democratic leadership is already talking to primary, you know, opponents. I mean, it's tough. It's tough to jam them here, but, you know, this is why, like, you wanted Nina Turner to win. Why you wanted those extra numbers of Congress people in there, because ultimately the leverage has to be used against the moderates. It really always does, right? In anything that is it has any ambition. And they tell this story that it's really about, like, keeping the progressives in check, but the progressives have a built-in a built-in sort of like check, which is that they want to provide benefits to people. Exactly. And so, like, you know, they come in and they're like, I want, you know, these people are dehydrated. And, like, if I have to give them a half a glass of water, I want to give them as much water as possible. And whereas everybody else is like, we don't want to spare any water for any of them. And we just, you know.
Progressives are the most pragmatic in these situations of anybody. They always have been. And it's because they have a moral basis for what they're trying to do. So they can be appealed to on a moral basis. Say, look, you know, we're sorry, we've got a bunch of jerks over here who are refusing to go along with us, but we can take, you know, get half a slice here and give, you know, like the Medicaid expansion, you know, and the progressives have to do this big gut check and say, am I going to blow up the whole thing, or will I at least just take this much for the Medicaid expansion? It's kind of a hostage situation, and they hold progressives hostage because they are moral actors in politics, trying to help vulnerable people who they do not feel comfortable abandoning, which is just simply not true of anybody else in politics. Not the centrists, not the moderates, and certainly not the Republicans. So they end up in this situation. The only thing I can think of here is that there is an argument to be made that is just has nothing to do with morality. It has purely to do with hardcore electoral politics, which is The numbers suggest that if the progressives hold out and actually say, look, no, we're not doing it, forget it, we're crazy left-wing socialist hippies now, and we don't care about anything, we're not going to do that. If they can make that case to somehow to the caucus, you could say that if you blow up Joe Biden's agenda, you lose everything. Because what happens is you've got nothing to run on in 2022. You have the negative partisanship, which you and I agree is the main thing, but that's not going to be enough. You can't just sit there and say, oh, nothing worked. I mean, he got the one bill through in the middle of COVID and that's it. And he withdrew from Afghanistan and everybody had a total hissy fit over it. And it turned out to be a huge burden on his approval rating. And he got nothing else done. They can make an argument that, look, if you guys tank this bill, that's where we're at and we're going to lose everything. And probably Donald Trump will be president again in 2024. I don't know how salient that will be to these moderates. I'm not sure. I can't even figure out why they're even putting up a fuss right now over this. I mean, and the thing is that these three that are on the committee objecting to the pharmaceutical bill, they're not endangered. They're not frontline. They're not of the front line. None of them are running in districts where they are in danger of losing their seats. So this is a sincerely held belief. And honestly, I kind of agree with you about Nancy. I'm not quite sure what's going. I shouldn't call her Nancy on Speaker Pelosi. That I don't where's the thumb screws? I mean, granted, she tends to do these things quietly, but I'm seeing no evidence of it. Maybe when they get to reconciliation.
This is the type of thing that you shouldn't be hearing about unless they needed to put on a show for their patrons. I mean, let's be clear, too. This is not a belief system. This is a transactional.
Right.
This is like,
right. It's
I believe in enriching myself. And make no mistake about it, the chief of staff, I think was it Peters or Schrader's former chief of staff is like literally lobbying for the prescription drug, I don't know if it's big pharma or whatever it is, but I mean, this is completely transactional. And
I literally just got a fundraising text from Pelosi.
You did?
For the DCCC. I don't know. Maybe she's listened to the broadcast.
I mean, the bottom line is like, maybe these guys need to do this to put on their show for their patrons to keep getting their money. But, I mean...
Well, that's what we have to hope for, and that's sick.
It's sick.
Yes.
Sick. I'm sitting here praying that they're just doing this for money. They're just doing it because they're totally corrupt and they just have to do it for money, but they don't really mean it. And at the end of the day, they'll
fold. Right. Exactly.
What a system.
Yep. America, love it or leave it.
Here we are. And you wonder about Occupy Wall Street. Gee, where'd that come from, I wonder?
Heather, as always, a real pleasure. Thanks so much. We'll be in touch and we'll be talking more about this,
Oh, yeah.
We'll see.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Sam. Have a good weekend, you guys.
Bye-bye.
Yep. Thanks, Heather.
All right, folks. Going to head into the fun half.
Hi, Emma. It's Speaker Nancy Pelosi. I'd be remiss if I didn't check in with you during such a pivotal time for our country. With everything that just happened, I know there's a lot on your mind, so I'm humbly asking, will you take a brief moment to share your thoughts on my DCCC survey? Do you want me to share my thoughts?
I mean, maybe you should do that.
What are the things that... It's so non-specific. It's a pivotal moment and all the things happening.
I know, right?
The things you care about?
Those happening.
Things are happening now.
And the things you don't like, they could be happening.
Yeah, so it's very pivotal. We're pivoting between good and bad things, so you better send me money.
Yeah, Kevin down in the comms department is like, I don't want to have to write 2 emails this month.
Yeah.
See if we can just like
make it a twofer. Do
the general one and just like, I don't know, change up the questions. You think people are going to remember the different order of it? I mean, at the end, the real question is, will you give $50? That's basically it. Folks, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can keep this show surviving and thriving by becoming a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you not only get support the free show, you get the fun half every day. So check it out. Jointhemajorityreport.com. Don't forget the AM Quickie. You can find that, majority.fm. Scroll all the way down to the bottom and put your email address at the bottom of the front page of majority.fm. We got our Discord. We got the merch shop, shop.majorityreportradio.com. Oh, we've got the app at Majority app. You know, all the things. All the things. Check out Nomi Show, youtube.com/The Nomiki Show. Matt, what's happening in the Matt Leckian media universe?
Yeah, this week on Left Reckoning, we talked with Darna Noor about Entergy, the climate denying utility that's failing New Orleans right now, and we also talked about how Bitcoin isn't going to, help Palestinians or Afghans or anybody else who's currently having severe trouble, like Bitcoin boosters say. So that was on Wednesday. This weekend, we have a patron show. Victor Pugy talking about how Bolsonaro had to apologize for his little stunt at the Supreme Court. And what the state of the Brazilian left is. So that's for patrons, patreon.com/Left Reckoning.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920 is the number. See you in the fun half. Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous? You're a little bit upset? You're riled up?
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude. You want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
Some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1/2. 5 8s. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance, dance, dance.
Rand Paul.
I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
I think I might be a Nazi.
Agree.
No.
Death to America.
Do.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way! Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook. Throw our hands up.
Ooh.
Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me...
Hey, shut up!
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
We are back. We are back. Well, some of us are.
Am I being shown?
No.
Oh, you're not being shown? Okay.
Could have been comedic, but I'm glad you saved me.
Charlie Kirk's punchable face on the IM. Hey, I'm our crew. I've been listening to a lot of debates and debate reviews by people like Ben Burgess and Destiny. Seems like a lot of right-wingers mostly have quick talking points that are almost meaningless, like businesses create jobs, not government. Wondering whether there's value in having similarly formatted responses from a left perspective for debate purpose. Obviously more based in reality. Well, I do have one. Businesses and government create jobs. That's mine. Jobs are jobs. When government spends, it does so in a way that, at least theoretically, promotes more benefit than when businesses spend on jobs. When government creates jobs, they are, at least theoretically, more beneficial to society than when business does.
Mm-hmm. I have one, which is labor exploitation has always been the engine of capitalism.
There you go. We're almost saying the same thing on that.
Yeah, Matt said it better.
Well, Matt sounds,
Yeah, this is how we get our talking points whittled down.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Giving voice to the voiceless. Say that.
Giving talking points to the voiceless.
6 words.
Yeah. Emma's Sports Corner. NBA players, I think, are largely more progressive than their football counterparts. But the league itself is about as progressive as when Exxon makes their Twitter picture rainbow-colored during Pride.
I don't know if that's true.
I don't know. We could get Waz on here to talk about that. I mean, I think they have they're much better at handling their image. I think definitely. And there's problematic stuff about the NBA, like who was the Nugget? Mohammed Abdul-Rauf, who basically wanted to do a similar Kaepernick-style protest. And now basically why you never saw any NBA players kneel was because they said you can't do that.
Yeah, like there's some truth to it, though, in the sense of like Daryl Morey, when the GM of the 76ers, when he critiqued the Chinese government, the front of the league management and ownership like really cracked down on him for that because the NBA is so profitable in China. Like there are things where they kind of do.
Of course, it's capitalist, but the point, I don't think it's the equivalent of ExxonMobil changing. Like the NBA has fully guaranteed contracts, and the union has done a good job in negotiating with them, and it's created a much more fertile ground for that kind of protest than say the NFL.
Yeah, I mean it's also like a comparison to the NFL thing. I'll put him up now, but yeah, like the NFL is especially bad.
Yes. I don't know.
Calling from a 509 area code. Who's this? Where you calling from? Please don't say the word giant.
Hey, Sam, this is Ronald Reagan.
Oh, Ronald Reagan. How giant of you to call.
Yeah, so I just wanted to actually do have a call slightly on topic. Just feel like I really like Emma, but she's been getting a lot of attention lately with these sports guys. And I feel kind of bad for you, Sam. Like, nobody talks to you anymore. So, like, what kind of wood are you cutting these days?
I am building a cabinet for my kitchen, to be honest with you. And I got the...
I asked you a specific question about the kind of wood.
Well, I am about to answer. I found 3/4-inch plywood to be a little pricey these days. And so I went with that, what do they call it? It's sort of like engineered wood with the white formica on the outsides or whatever it is.
It's like a veneer.
Yeah,
right?
it's a veneer, but it's also pressed wood. And I'm also now like a little bit concerned that, that stuff, it doesn't hold that.
How does the veneer rip through a 2x4? I'd be a little bit worried about that veneer coming off. Not a 2x4. I'd throw a table saw.
I'm not worried about the veneer coming off. It'll cut fine, and if you score it first with a carpet knife, you can usually make a clean cut. I'm worried about it holding together with screws, and so what I may have to do is like peg it. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. You're gonna have to get.
We know what you mean by pegging it.
Emma.
Oh.
Emma.
Oh, darn it! Can't believe I did that.
Yeah.
Aggressive.
Pegging on the mind. But what?
You gotta go to wood glue for those pegs.
Well, I just use, whatever it is that, what is it, the woodcraft, the one that everybody, the tight bond.
Yeah. Do you ever go for like an exotic wood? There's a really interesting African wood called padoke, and it's like a really fine redwood. It's got a deep red, and when you cut it, actually the sawdust it's actually kind of hard to clean up because it's such a deep red, and it's very, I don't know, it's really, really interesting to work with, maybe for a smaller project like a jewelry box or something like that.
Yeah, no, I don't do stuff like that. I don't do anything.
Are you a Nikita guy or more like a DeWalt? Fuck Nikita as far as I'm concerned. That's what I've always said.
Yeah, no.
I'm more of a DeWalt guy.
I had what do you call it? They actually changed their name now. What was it? It's the green one. I don't know. It's you got to get you got to get the same brand so that you're with your power driver and your screwdriver have to be the same so that you can switch out the batteries.
Well, look, I need you to update your. Well, first of all, start an Instagram.
All right.
And then we need some Tucker. We need some Tucker Carlson.
What about Title 42? Tell me about this. Tell me about this. You're an immigration lawyer, is my understanding. Title 42 was blocked by a judge, federal judge.
Yeah.
Is that good, or is that really?
Is it good that we won on Title 42? Yes.
I mean, is that enjoyment? Is that going to be enough? Is that going to be sufficient?
Well, I mean, the Biden administration. We'll get back to the wood. We'll come back.
I was going to say, we're working into your favorite wood glue.
Like, I want to know when the other shoe's going to drop in this wood conversation.
I know it. I heard it coming, the other shoe, and I figured I'd get out before it did. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I mean, one of the, I guess some people would say not that surprising things about the Biden administration is that there's been this continuity in how they're litigating a lot of these cases. There's another case about whether or not Chad Wolf was actually the director of Homeland Security, and it's like a pretty straightforward case that he was not, properly appointed under the law. And the Biden administration is still in court arguing that he was. And the reason why that matters is because, we were trying to undermine,
invalidate
a bunch of the things,
right?
Yeah, things that Chad Wolf had done. And so, I guess it depends on what the administration decides to do. If they want to continue fighting it, we'll see. So, yeah.
All right. Well,
anyhow,
good news. Clower weighed in on the IM. The green one was Hitachi. It's absolutely right, and they have changed the name to Metabo.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know. I like the DeWalt yellow, and I find that their products are very reliable. So, anyhow, that's all.
Great. Thanks. Appreciate the call.
There's got to be something else going on.
Melamine. Thank you, Jimmy Files. Everybody, we got a very handy another Louis Gohmert Crusader. Hitachi is now Metabo. Exactly. And then I got to read this one. Hugh G-Rection. Sam is the goat. He'll surely read my username.
I didn't yesterday. That's
if you say it correctly, give yourself a shofar under the table. Love the show, Sam. Thank you for giving us the ability to interact with you through this medium and uplifting us plebes during the darkest, skid-marked underwear of times. Yes, well, there you are. Yep.
All right.
What do we do for a clip here?
Let me pull up the clip sheet.
Let's take another phone call. Calling from a 847 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
You're eating?
Am I eating?
No. It's really like did you take a Xanax before the show today?
Yeah, just a little loosey-goosey. 847. 847 going once, going twice, gone. Calling from a 458 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? Now we know where you have 458. He's here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is Zach from Missouri.
Zach from Missouri. What's on your mind?
Well, I call in every day because I don't have the best service to watch it live streaming, but I can listen to it over the phone. So my mom works for the Census. All that to say, I don't really have much to talk about, except my mom works for the Census Bureau. And
So wait a second. Let me get this clear. You call in to listen to the show. That's the way you listen to the show, by calling in.
yeah, it works better than live streaming. I get the wheel a lot. I'm working on I'm building this little cabin on my brother's property.
What about the phone?
Down in rural Missouri.
What about the phone?
Yeah, it does a little better.
No,
Does
but I
a little
mean, what
better.
about the app? Can't you just listen to the audio?
Because that's over Wi-Fi.
I'm not a techie.
Whoa! I know you're not a techie, but you're costing me. You're costing me money here. So I want to work with you on this. If you get our app.
Yeah, I don't even have a job right now, Sam.
Well, I know the app is free. This is all free, man.
Oh.
All right.
Okay.
I'm not going to make you pay for anything.
All right.
You get the app. You get the app.
Yes, sir.
You get the app, and then you go to the app, and this way you don't have to wait until we start taking phone calls. You can listen to the first half of the show too. Okay.
Yeah, I usually go back in the evening and listen to it, so I have no idea what you guys have been talking about. Long story short,
All right.
I do have something that my mom's an anti-vaxxer. I was raised somewhat of a cult out in the middle of nowhere.
Okay.
I don't know why I'm saying somewhat. It's just a complete cult. Anyways, my mom has since moved away after my dad died. He was a big part of it, and she moved away under my prodding. But anyways, so she's an anti-vaxxer, and hadn't gotten the vaccine my entire life until COVID vaccine. And I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I know the benefits of it, but she had just never given me one, and I have a phobia of needles. And anyways, I had to go and get it. But anyways, she's gonna lose her job by the end of the month, and I think, I mainly just the point of, or what I would like you guys to talk about is the misinformation that's out there, and I know that she's misinformed and a conspiracy theorist, but at the same time, she's a victim of. She's been with them for 15 years now, and I'm not even sure she'll get her 401k she's built up through them if she ends up getting fired.
Oh, jeez.
But
I mean,
yeah,
This is over the vaccine requirements.
She works. Well, no,
Yes,
wait a second. Does she work for the federal government, or does she work in a company of over 100 people?
No, she works for the federal government, so she has no wiggle room.
She has no wiggle room.
So I'm getting my booster this weekend, and I'm gonna go down and see her, and just have some whiskey with her, and just say, hey, look at me, I can drink the next day, but and I feel great. But she's just heavy into. I get a Facebook or a Messenger alert every day from her, saying.
I think there has been a billion vaccinations so far. A billion jabs. Like,
I know.
I mean, the only thing that I that maybe you could say to her is, I mean, Mom, do you really? I've gotten the vaccination. If it was really that dangerous, do you want to really be around when I'm not around? Like, if it's going to take us out, wouldn't you rather? I'm being sincere here. Like, I know. I feel, I feel some sympathy for people who have been, just misinformed or have whatever it was that got her into, a cult or whatever it is that got her into, this mindset. I sympathize with it. And, I can tell you that, I'm dealing with in my own personal world, there are people who haven't gotten vaccinated who are really important in terms of caring for people who are close to me. And it's extremely frustrating. And I don't, I would use any leverage you could because, if only because you don't want her to forfeit her pension. You don't want her to be without a job. But also you want her to be protected from COVID.
Yeah, I know. I was hoping that would be the straw that broke the camel's back, and she would just go in. But I don't know. Anyways,
I'm really
thanks
sorry.
for the advice.
All right,
That's
listen.
all right.
Hold on.
Maybe I can convince her.
All right. Well,
Go down
good
this
luck
weekend.
with that. In the meantime, I will put you back on hold. But promise me you'll look into this. It is free. Do you have a smartphone?
Yeah, I'm gonna look into it.
Okay. You get the
I'm gonna
app.
do it right as soon as I get home.
Majority
Wi-Fi.
app, majority.app.com, right? And you just go to the live and you can just listen.
Oh, right. Something. Yeah.
You can just listen to the
No, I
audio.
hear
You
you.
don't get the YouTube, and that way it's thinner bandwidth, and it will drop in quality if you're getting only a little bit of a signal.
Well,
Kyle has been
but
on
it
this. You're
also-
breaking Kyle's heart.
Yeah, but it also, I'll do that. But it also, I do love talking to you guys. I kind of use it as an excuse to call in every day. But you guys have, in particular, you, Sam, but when Michael was on, you guys actually have gotten me through a really rough time. My wife died of cancer 2 years ago.
Oh gosh, I'm sorry to hear that.
And yeah, but anyway, so I just listen to you guys every day, and you guys were kind of a progressive family for me because I live in Missouri, obviously, and I'm around Trumpers, so got me through a rough time. And so I also like the chance to talk to you guys, but I'm really thankful for what you do, and keep it up. And a lot of times people call in, they're, Sam, you need to do this differently. You need to do this differently. You don't. I mean, you do what you do. You have interviews every day of things that you're interested in, and some of the most hard-fighting leftists in the country doing what they do, and you amplify their voices. That's your job. Your job isn't to unite the entire left. We all have a part to play. We need to unite the left. And then it's also, you're not hyperbolic. You don't, yes, you call out grifters like Jimmy Dore, but the difference between, I hate when people do that false equivalency. They say, well, you're doing this, or, you're engaging with Jimmy. Well, Jimmy completely cuts people off that are on the left and fighting like AOC and calling her like our enemy and our enemy to Medicare for all. No, she's the only one of the only ones advocating. She's not our enemy. Are her tactics not what you want them to be? Maybe. But to write someone off because they didn't do exactly what you want is just ridiculous. And if we don't get on the same page, and some people have different tactics. Some people might be in the long game. Like, people have critique of Bernie, but look what he's doing now. He's going to be central in passing possibly the most progressive package in, since FDR. So let's all get on the same page. And
well, listen, Zach, I appreciate the call, man.
Thank you.
Check out the app.
All right, go get the app.
All right.
Will do.
So to be clear, people are writing in like she's not going to lose her 401k. I don't know if it is like you are vested after a certain period of time with the federal government. I don't know. Hopefully that's not the case.
I think he'd know a little bit better.
Some people I am saying they won't lose it. Somebody else wrote in, I'm glad you took the call where we got to know that people are losing their 401k status due to anti-vaccine stance. It's pathetic, even though the mandate is fair. I understand people getting fired, but what's the reasoning behind losing past accumulated money in a 401k? I don't know what the rules are. I mean, everybody, I don't think that's a universal, right? It depends on when you vest in the 401k. Meanwhile, Ronald Reagan, who apparently feels like he didn't get enough airtime today, just IM'd me and said...
you have your own show, bro.
Yeah, geez. He just IM'd me and said, this guy's wrong. There are a lot of things you should be doing differently. So,
wow. I mean, as is his right.
I mean, he has a right to do it, but I mean, how much time do you need? Damn, man. God, you said your piece. The whole wood thing.
You're sick of talking about wood?
No,
and
I'm
construction?
not. No, I'm not.
Wow,
I'm not.
so you would have thought that would been a gift. You would still want to talk about
Wood Wizard.
No.
I live in Boise, and it's crazy here with COVID. My son's school has had 1 to 2 cases a week, and it's pretty scary. I have extended family now. We're vaccine deniers who are now all infected, including their 2-year-old. It's very sad. Thank you, guys. I work all over Idaho, and I use the live audio on the app without service. It works great, even in scary 3G areas. So, well, I got to notice that my daughter had been in close contact with somebody at school who had COVID. Apparently, in the city, if you're vaccinated, they will not quarantine you. If you're unvaccinated, get a quarantine because all the kids, it's not mandatory to be vaccinated to go back to school, and it's just the anxiety that it creates. The knock-on effects, like I'm worried that like maybe I got infected and I'm going to infect people here, and that's why I got my filter set up over there, and hopefully that's like at least drawing some. Hey.
Yeah, but Mila's, as you're saying, she's as careful as a kid can get. So.
She is. My kids are, both my kids have some measure of general anxiety, which they get from their old man a little bit, and then they're just conscientious. So a lot of KN95 masks. Left-handed stranger. Couple of things from yesterday's stream. Old Matt was a bit off on the Ben Shapiro music segment. Ben Shapiro claims enjoyment in classical music, not jazz. Jazz has a big African-American history, with white musicians treating jazz much like how modern races treat
I thought
rap
you said
music.
Classical.
No, he said jazz. I didn't. Yeah, I think that's a fair point.
Okay.
For instance, Miles Davis was abused during a show by cops just for having a break outside. I'd also highly recommend 2 of Adam Neely's videos, The Effed Up Legacy of the Rest of Miles Davis and The Theory and Music Theory and White Supremacy. Shapiro is an idiot. He doesn't have the slightest idea what he's talking about with music. He knows less about music than he does about politics. And Shapiro is also a pussy for not responding to Adam Neely on debating him on different aspects of music and white supremacy. Hope I didn't. Okay, there you go.
Also, there's a good Miles Davis documentary, The Birth of Cool by Stanley Nelson.
Fletch Nasty, if this was read yesterday, don't mind me. Happy belated Mexican Independence Day. As a Hispanic resident of the formerly disputed territory south of the Nueces River that kicked off the Mexican-American War, I always find it fun to think about if things went down differently. Left is best. Viva Mexico. The machines. This kid, Toucher, has been at the highest levels of federal government for the entirety of my life. He's shocked large corporations pay $0 in taxes. Geez, Joe, I wonder how that situation came about. This kid Toucher, I see what you're saying. Sam, not Theramin. Sam's not there, man. Happy Friday, Majority Reporters. Sam, can you give your opinion on the difference between populism and socialism and how it's discussed within American politics? I know people on the left who will describe as both, but folk on the right typically identify as populist but not socialist. Sorry. Well, socialism is a specific economic system wherein, like pure socialism, where there's far greater democratic control of the means of production and everything that sort of emanates from that. Populism is, there's a right-wing populism and there's a left-wing populism. And the left-wing populism, I think, wants things to be a little bit more egalitarian and not as much concentration of power at the top, but it is not looking for, I think, a wholesale reform of our economic system. It's just looking for more equity and fairness within the context of that system.
Right. So like populist revolts among like farmers, for instance, like 100 years or so ago, weren't against capitalism. They wanted a better shake from like the grain elevators and stuff like that.
Right. And right-wing populism tends to have some elements of that economic populism, but it also really tends to be defined by xenophobia, racism, nativism. I would also argue misogyny. And it's just sort of anti-establishmentarian on some level.
Yeah, I think false, I would also call it. Like the anti sort of capitalism stuff is just there because that's good propaganda, not because there's any actual commitment to it.
Populism without ideological underpinnings is, you know, when you see these movements go adrift.
Valley Girl. I worked for a law firm during Occupy Wall Street, and I was working in the evictions department. I wasn't political at the time, but I remember we got a memo from the bank saying we were not allowed to join Occupy. If we were identified as joining the movement, we would be let go. That got my attention. Interesting. Which of this insanity should we play? Oh, yeah, Jim Brewer.
Also, that Dave Rubin one's pretty funny.
Yeah, let's do it. It's Friday. Let's do it. Here's Jim Brewer. And I know exactly, well, I can speculate with a lot of confidence on how this went down.
Okay.
But here is Tucker Carlson with comedian Jim Brewer, who, in response to, well, I don't know if he says it's in direct response, but Patton Oswalt made an announcement. There were like 4 or 5 shows that he wasn't going to do because they weren't requiring vaccines as he was touring around. And every comedian can make their own decision. But do you think, as you watch this, contemplate, if you wanted to get attention in our society today, and I'm not saying that you change, you have like, I'm totally pro-vaccine, and therefore, but I really do need some attention. And how do I get on, let's say, Rogan show or Tucker Carlson show? How do I reach a big part of like who could possibly be my audience? Or even like, you know, if you're pro-vaccine, you're probably, and you're a performer, you're not necessarily going to get on shows because you are pro-vaccine. That sort of just seems to be the norm. So the idea is like, where's the man bites dog? What can I do with the man bites dog? And I may be a man who likes to bite dogs, but I'm going to maybe be a little more inspired to do it if I think it's going to actually pay off. And with that said, I give you Tucker Carlson with comedian Jim Brewer.
Well, honestly, I got a lot of feedback from a couple venues that I was playing, and my fans were really upset. They said, you know, I'm not comfortable with getting a COVID shot, and now they're saying I can't come see you perform unless I do that. And I looked into it, and that's the last thing you should be doing, is going, hey, you want to come see the, you know, like feeding the seal the fish. Hey, you want to come see a concert?
Pause it for 1 second. Pause it for 1 second. Pause it 1 second. Pause it 1 second.
That would be if the vaccine was some sort of food or sustenance to a pet or an animal that needs that. You know, the vaccine is not providing me with nutrition that I need to stay alive.
Well, he's trying to come up with an analogy of like, you know, that like you're enticing these people to be able to come see him, completely ignoring the sort of health implications of all of this, right? Like, and I love how Tucker says, yeah. That's like Tucker must take classes with like an acting coach who just teaches him, you've got to relax into the muscles so that you don't laugh when you hear this stuff. And just, if you need to, one of the ways you avoid laughing, just let some of the air come out. That's what it's all about with Tucker, because he knows the guy he's interviewing is completely out of his mind and all of this is BS. But he's got to keep that face there I'm gonna go see like maybe a specialist to see if there's people who actually specialize in how not to crack up.
Well, the reaction shot is how the audience knows how to respond.
Exactly. All right. So let's go back here, and
That's why he performs outrage, though, because it gets them riled up. Similarly to, seals responding to...
Yeah, listen to this metaphor. Go back a little bit, because I want you to listen to Jim Brewer's metaphor here. He's looked into it.
Thing you should be doing is going, hey, you want to come see like feeding the seal the fish. Hey, you want to come see a concert? You want to here, catch the fish. Why would you do that? Why would you? I don't want any of my fans forced to come laugh, and they got to get a shot in them. And honestly, Tucker, I got to be honest with you. What really started my video was there's a new narrative, and the new narrative is the unvaccinated are the beast. Kill the beast. This program goes on forever.
Exactly.
Kill the beast. The beast is the unvaccinated. Kill them. And when our leader put that out there and pointed the finger like we're the demons, I'm not vaccinated. I had COVID. You're not going to tell me about my body. I know my body. I know my morals. I know my faith. You don't come telling me and threaten me and everyone else as if we're the demons. I have 2 close friends right now, fully vaccinated, and they got COVID. Yeah. And they're both sick. So this is not about safety, because if it was, just like you said and I said in my video, eat more fruit, take care of your body, go to the gym. I've been saying that forever.
Oh, only I've been saying take care of your body by going to the gym. That's an original thought.
I'm pretty sure the idea is not to kill the demon. Pretty sure the idea is vaccinate the demon so they don't die.
He mixed up his QAnon stuff there, right? Because did he say that the vaccinated are
the demon?
Right. No, but what's the beast?
The vaccinated are the beasts.
Right.
Yeah,
okay, so it's the mark of the beast.
Biden's saying the vaccinated are the beast. We're not the beast.
Right.
I don't know who is the beast.
No, but the point is that the QAnon people say that the vaccine, getting the shot is the mark of the beast. But Biden is saying kill the beast? I don't know.
Yeah. Kill the beast ostensibly with the vaccine.
Lots of beasts running around.
Wonder if he's ever had a friend who wore his seatbelt in a car in an accident and still got hurt.
Did he eat more fruit?
Yeah, they would have been sicker if they hadn't been vaxxed, you moron. Like, this is what we know about the vaccine, is it mitigates how severely ill you get. So the fact that they got sick at all, I bet they're really glad, or if they aren't, they should be, and they should get smarter friends.
There's only sick, and then there's only not sick.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no degree, Matt.
Oh, what is this? I wish I could go back and take the vax out of me because I got sick.
I think Jim Brewer has had been living a little rough.
His eyes
He's been living religiously, hasn't he?
Yeah, I think religiously and rough.
Yeah.
Do you know him?
I mean, I not personally, no. I have, I don't know.
You hear things.
We share. I've known people who've worked with him. Let's put it that way. So, here is Ben Shapiro, who apparently was heartbroken by the results in California. He's really upset. Let's tune in.
So on a national level, why should we care about California? Because what it actually presages is not just politics in California. What it presages is a question, whether we actually do want to remain part of the same body politic. If we do want to remain part of the same body politic, we're going to have to construct a system of a federal governance in which Texas can be Texas and California can be California. However, California has to let Texas be Texas. And herein lies the rub, because the federal government has no interest when run by Democrats.
That is the current system that we operate in now.
Well, I don't understand how California could presage a recall in California.
Mm-hmm.
That is about California voters only, right? It's not like the federal government came in and said, we're not going to allow this recall.
Oh, well,
how that presages some problem for Texas to be Texas. But
Biden says that Florida has to be California and Texas has to be Montana. He's already said this already.
I also feel like we had a lot of this fight about, the federal government and the states. I feel like that question was sort of resolved 130 years ago, was it?
Well, clearly he's trying to take that up again.
50 years? All right, but yeah, go back a little bit. Go back a little bit, Bradley, and let's
the states' rights stuff is so lame and played out. But
same body politic. We're going to have to construct a system of a federal governance in which Texas can be Texas and California can be California. However, California has to let Texas be Texas. And herein lies the rub, because the federal government has no interest, when run by Democrats, in allowing Texas to be Texas. They would like Texas to be California. And if that's the case, what you're going to end up with is a fairly ugly split between states that wish to be left alone and states that wish to run their business from the top level of the federal government. I think this is why you're hearing so much talk these days about a quote-unquote civil war, or talk about secession, or talk about the country breaking apart. It's a serious question. Whenever you form a body politic, which is what happened at the founding and what happened again in the aftermath of the Civil War, if you form a body politic, you have to decide whether you wish to remain part of the same country. And if so, what common rules can you hold at the top level that everybody can agree to? Well, if the basic notion of American government is that the federal government's going to make all the rules and it's just going to be a struggle for the power of the one ring, then this country is not going to last this way. It is just not.
Or the rings.
And maybe then the best hope for a lot of conservatives and maybe for a lot of liberals, depending on who's in control of that federal government, is a friendly separation. That is what that 4H is. And not that California is the wave of the future, but that California and its polarization is the wave of the future. And that we're going to get, I promise you, in the aftermath of this, real estate values in Florida are going to go up. Real estate values in Arizona, in Texas, in Nevada, they're going to go up because Republicans are going to continue leaving. And maybe that's what the California politicians want. So be it.
They've been saying that forever, that there could be a mass exodus from blue states.
Jumbled.
Yeah.
And he's saying California's not letting Texas be Texas because California voted not to recall their governor. He's just upset because the Republican Party has cratered there, because when they had their opportunity, which they had multiple opportunities, they've been rejected. They got rejected because Pete Wilson was a xenophobic racist. They got rejected because Arnold Schwarzenegger's BS about, responsible governance and the way that he was talking about spending, it turned out to be a complete canard and BS. They've failed. They have failed over and over and over again in California. And this is not my assessment. This is the assessment of the people in California. There's not 2/3 Democrats in California because, millions of Republicans moved to Texas. That's not what happened. Texas, incidentally, is not getting redder.
We must have missed the first part of his segment in which he claims that there was some sort of federal interference. Like maybe Biden campaigning for Gavin Newsom means that he is like, these blue states are the proxy of the radical Biden government, and then the rest of the red states want to just go about their own business. He's like litigating the Federalist Papers all over again. What a bore.
I think it is honestly just about like, how can I generate some talk about the Civil War? How can I get into this? How can I get into where all the action is, but not walk in the same door as the other people? That's basically, I think, what's going on.
Right, because this is his this is his creative spin and his creative take on this, even though we hear every year some right-wing pundit talk about secession.
Oh my God. I mean, look, there's...
And we hear them talk about, like, this false premise of which states are operating as their own governing body with states' rights and which ones aren't. We don't hear peep about that when there's a Republican in the executive branch.
Well, I hear if people if Ben Shapiro is really thinks that there's value, or any conservative talkers thinks that there's any value in red states seceding, here's the first thing they should be doing. They should be advocating for a return of all federal tax dollars that they get. That would be step one. Return those federal tax dollars so that you can show your people and the rest of the people of the country, like, we don't need the federal government.
Well, they do that, but only for extended unemployment for their citizens.
That's right. They'll cut that off.
The other stuff they'll keep.
Right. That's a good point. Colin, on the IM, Aaron is not cool. All praise to Digby, the GOAT. Is there not any possibility that now Trumpism has motivated people to get out and vote against him? Now there's a pride and a routine in getting out to vote to where we may see more success in the midterms? Is it possible? Sure. But I don't. I think you need that motivation. Judy really, I mean, look at Republicans. There's a reason why they're doing this anti-mask stuff. Now, maybe they just didn't have, they weren't able to sort of like, Joe Biden's just too white for them to motivate other things, too male for them to motivate the other thing that they need. So they go with the sort of, anti-seatbelt argument. Judy Ruiali, that tune worked for outro too. Jennifer from St. Louis, my first car, 1979 Datsun 210. Sweet. Datsun. Had an 8-track tape deck. Rock on, dude. Datsun. Do you know what Datsun was? Do you know what a Datsun was?
No.
Yeah, Bradley knows. You don't know what it is?
No.
It's what Nissan used to be called.
Really?
Yep. There's your old man the story for the day.
That's one thing I have zero interest in, cars.
Okay. Recall what? It was not a vote against the recall. It was a vote against Larry Elder. He's a monster. You or your guests may not know statistics. The recall was super popular till Larry Elder picked up steam. Stop kidding yourself. The recall was going to lead to Larry Elder. I'm not kidding myself at all. I don't think this is a pro Gavin Newsom vote. That the whole argument I've been making is negative partisanship. And the problem that the Republicans have is that they're all Larry Elders. I mean, that's the bottom line. The one of the 10 Republicans who voted for impeachment just resigned in Ohio.
Yeah.
And you're going to see a couple more do it, I bet, too. They are all Larry Elders. That's just it. That is exactly my point. Wayne Kerr. Jim Brewer was supporting QAnon. He's not grifting. He's authentically loopy. Yes, indeed.
We have Dave Rubin kind of getting mad about the California-Texas dynamic, if we want to go to that.
Let's do it.
As well. Here he takes a little bit of shot at some old friends. It's a little
now, wait a second. You guys already covered the hilarious.
We did. Yeah.
Watched it so many times. It was so funny because he thinks he's not on camera.
Yes.
And he's drinking. He's doing shots of tequila.
Coming out of a Poland Spring.
And it's like, oh, yeah.
Oh, I'm so sad.
Now, the way that would have been funnier is if he had did something funny when he wasn't on when he thought he wasn't on camera.
Yeah.
Taking a shot at one of these people he's really mad at all the time.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's something that would have been funny or humorous. And then the reveal that he thinks he's doing that off camera. But it ended up that the whole joke was just that, like, he's prepping and he thought he was off camera.
My audience doesn't know that I take tequila shots at 8 a.m.
Right.
Oh, it's so hard to lie to you that there's hope. That's also the joke.
Yeah, right. Jeez, man.
Yeah. But anyways, here's Dave Rubin's real sincere stuff where he's not joking around.
Obvious that he supports a guy like Adam Schiff. And we see this with all the liberals. A guy like like Joe Rogan, for example.
He's talking about Bill Maher supports Adam Schiff, even though he's like scolding the left. So Dave's like, is Bill Maher getting it? No, he still likes Adam Schiff. So.
Yeah, let me make something clear. Bill Maher has been scolding the left for 25 years.
Yes.
He, if anything, he was a libertarian, a classical liberal, until the Bush years made it just impossible for him to deny, and they fired him. But that's where he lives. I mean, are you serious? Is he really thinking like, I'm doing the where is Bill Maher, and this could mark a change? Incidentally, like, go back and listen to what Dave Rubin was predicting just like 3 or 4 years ago about like where the Democrats are leaving. There's something happening, folks.
Damn exit.
Here, keep going.
Teaching racism in school. They're teaching this hyper-racialized thing in school. It's coming. There's no liberals to stand up for this stuff. And then he brings on people like Adam Schiff on his show, and it's obvious that he supports a guy like Adam Schiff. And we see this with all the liberals. A guy like like Joe Rogan, for example. And these are not, I'm really trying not to make these personal attacks. I'm trying to talk about this in the idea set of what these guys talk about. Joe Rogan, in an odd sense, did the right thing because he was a Bernie supporter, which made no sense, right? It makes no, in my view, it makes no sense to be a Bernie supporter. You sit down with people like Jordan Peterson and all these brilliant people for years and years and years, and at the end, when it came down to it for the presidency, you were supporting Bernie Sanders. Makes no sense. But Joe Rogan, when he signed the $100 million deal, which I'm told is a lot more than $100 million with Spotify, he lived in California. And you know what he did right before he signed the deal? He left. He went to Texas. But the thing that he was telling everybody to vote for, that he's voting for, Bernie Sanders, was to raise taxes on everybody, especially people like him. So the liberals, in this sense, they're all still confused. They're looking at their watch, and a watch should be right twice a day, but they can't seem to ever get it right. They can't seem to ever get it right. So it's like, Bill Maher, take the last step here. I get it. You're in Hollywood. You've made your career on being a liberal. That is a lofty goal and a worthwhile thing. Trust me, I get it more than most people. But at this point, unless you're willing to say, I will not support any Democrats, it doesn't mean the Republicans are great. But everything you believe in is now a Republican principle. Now, if you really still think that high taxation makes sense, if you really still think that handouts make sense and affirmative action makes sense and some of that stuff, well then.
Support the Republicans. It's not that they're all great, but you just got to support them.
500,000 views for that video.
Yep.
That's just stunning.
I love how now it's useful for him to say Joe Rogan is a liberal because Rogan stopped inviting him back on the show.
Exactly.
Right?
That's what that is.
Because Rogan made one comment saying he'd probably vote for Bernie Sanders if he was voting in the Democratic primary.
Right.
And so, like, let's hang my hat on that.
I'm sure the part about Dave Rubin being an idiot was not the thing that made that turned off.
It's so weird that these grifters, their entire operating principle is who will come on my show, who will invite me on their show, and who will accept me into their fold. And like Dave Rubin kind of has a little crack in the door with the Blaze crowd, but they'll never let him fully in because he's gay. So he's just yearning and grasping for that acceptance from that very specific crowd. Now that Rogan's cut him out, you're a liberal. Bill Maher, you know, I don't know, maybe he's trying to make this public appeal so he gets noticed. Bill Maher would totally have Dave on his show.
Well, I don't know. I would imagine he's known about him, so if he's not doing it, he's not doing it.
That's probably a message to Dave. I wonder what's going on there, because they live close enough to each other, I think.
I mean,
it's not like, he lives out in Hollywood. Dude, you live in Hollywood.
Right.
Oh, no, I don't. I live in Encino or wherever give me a break. Oh, my God. I don't get, Rogan's just confused. He's confused. He's a liberal, but he's trying to avoid his taxes. No, he's just the guy who likes to avoid his taxes. And then he has some ideas that just you pay him a lot of money.
Also, if you want to be popular, like Bernie is the candidate you would endorse, like just from a Joe Rogan standpoint. Are you going to endorse Ted Cruz?
Here is... let's play this Clarence Thomas clip. Shall we?
Okay.
Let's hear this.
When we do that and we begin to venture into political, the legislative or executive branch lanes, and resolving things that are better left to those branches. Those of us, particularly in the federal judiciary with lifetime appointments, are asking for trouble. I think a lot of the pressure on the nomination and selection process is because of that. I think the court was thought to be the least dangerous branch, and we may have become the most dangerous.
And that's a brag.
They don't do this unless they're trying to send a message. And I don't know who that message is for. It could be he's trying to signal to Breyer, don't retire.
Don't give in to the political whims, the winds and the tides.
It could be he's also aware, like people like Gorsuch and Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett are obviously, in many respects, illicitly sitting on the Supreme Court because of politics. Or it could be like, hey guys, we've got to do this this presentation to the country that we're not political because we've got to pretend like our decisions are motivated by something other than pure political partisanship. There is no world in which the Supreme Court justices can really look at what's going on in Texas and say that this makes any sense. You cannot allow... They shouldn't have just struck it down for the sake of Roe v. Wade. They should have struck it down because it is a system in which basically is where statutes are passed specifically to avoid federal jurisdiction on federal questions. And that in and of itself should have been a reason for them to strike that down or to enjoin it. When does the Supreme Court... Remember, they stopped the vote in Florida. That guy did.
Yeah.
Stopped the vote in Florida because they didn't want it to in any way influence the outcome. Anything going forward would somehow prejudice the public. But you don't stop a law, you don't enjoin at the very least a law that was designed to evade federal jurisdiction, just standing in a constitutional and a clearly constitutional question. Come on, give me a break.
Yeah, who knows? We don't have the full context of the quote, but maybe that after that he laughed maniacally and it was his supervillain turn.
Is the camera off now? Just kidding.
Well, it could have been a brag. He's like, I am the danger. To quote,
I brought the heat.
White. Yeah.
Yes. The camera's off, right? Okay, good. All right, final phone call of the day, ladies and gentlemen. We weren't going to take even phone calls today. Go ahead. You're calling from a 510 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, first off, this is Jake from the Bay Area.
Jake from the Bay Area.
First off, Shana Tova.
Thank you.
And my question is, well, I got two things. First off is a question. Second is kind of some advice for convincing anti-vaxxers to question their ways. So the question is kind of on topic to what you guys were talking earlier about Occupy Wall Street. I used to be a liberal. I grew up in the Bush era and saw, I thought, oh, Dems are going to be good. Dems are going to be great. And then Obama happened, and then Occupy Wall Street happened, and it really opened my eyes to the kind of, the milquetoast vanillery of Democrats when they get into power. And I think that's completely, it's completely ignored by most quote unquote leftists, especially online. A lot of people are like, think that they need to preach, like the Jimmy Dore types think that they need to preach to this imagined leftist thing, whereas like really all I'm saying is, we need to be appealing to liberals. Liberals need like I used to be a liberal, and I got angry, and I became more of a leftist, and I became a leftist. So I'm trying to, the question is, how do we get libs to get angry without coming off batshit crazy in the process? Because I think a lot of efforts in order to get people angry, so to speak, make us come off crazy, like the Medicare March for Medicare for All, Force the Vote. They all make us come off as, and like you see all the like the Assange stuff, it makes us look absolutely insane. Like, what can we do to enrage people and kind of overstep the MSNBC? I mean, the media barriers. How do we overstep the media barriers without coming off insane? That's the question.
I mean, I frankly, that's like I think what I mean. You described our project here more or less. I think on this show, I agree that there is a narrow set of stuff that gets discussed on a place like MSNBC, right? And there is a narrow perspective, and certainly the administration of that network is centrist, is like on the right side of the Democratic Party, in my estimation.
Definitely.
And, there's a couple of people, and then I would say there's also like there's like a, ratings sort of pressures and stuff like that. And frankly, some of the more drier and boring stuff doesn't appeal to the audience, and you don't have the ability to sort of curate your audience because you're part of a 12-hour lineup or whatever it is. And yes, I think the reason why the Force the Vote stuff came off as crazy is because it was crazy. I mean, it simply was. I mean, I don't feel the same way necessarily about the Assange stuff. I think there's a little bit more ambiguity there, and I think
definitely.
I think
but the conversation is just
the way that it's like the way that like and this is a problem just broadly speaking online. Like, the issue I think is important is the most important issue. That dynamic is not, confined to those spaces. But I think the way that you do that is, I think most people who are liberal, as you're describing them, just don't engage in politics that much, and they don't see it. I mean, I was talking to a guy last night who was basically like that, a little bit Republican leaning. And he said, like, at one point, and part of it, was Trump, frankly. And part of it was, Bush for some people. Like, you start to engage in this stuff and you start to realize, like, hey, wait a second, this is problematic. Like, I mean, I have no doubt that if you took 100 liberals and put them in a room and describe to them what's going on now with these three Congress people, right, who are sinking the prescription drug bill, and
the reconciliation,
and which could ultimately harm the reconciliation. If you were to lay that out to them, that would be the beginning of a driftward left for I don't know, 30, 70 of them. And there's plenty of stories to sort of like continue, to present that. How far they go, I think as a function of like where they're situated. But I think a lot of this is just simply, there's just not that much of an information, or it's not made compelling to them, or they don't see the implications of it. And so, I think on some level that's where I see us in this show, within the sort of concentric circles that exist in, maybe they're not circles, maybe, whatever, that exists within this space, is to like basically funnel people left. Where they end up is where they end up, but it is to funnel people left.
Yeah, I think that, so the question really should be, other than other than watching and or listening to the Majority Report? What can we do to make people?
Well, I think share
feel left
people, with these stories, the ones that are the most egregious,
and join organizations locally. I think too.
Yes. You got to. I mean, and not just both. I think there's value in joining the DSA and then also joining like the local Democratic Party, and you can be a slightly different iteration of yourself depending on who your audience is in that situation, and you start to bridge those things.
Yeah, and too many people think that it's like moving left is finding more leftist podcasts to listen to instead of the less left ones you are, and it's really like where you get involved in your community or your workplace to make it more democratic.
I mean,
definitely.
Going out and putting yourself, into these organizations so that when, you're around people, because you want people who are sort of almost like, have some, they're somewhat, they're not random. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. People who are sort of in the loop, but not completely engaged.
Yes. Or are out of the loop, but have joined something because they want something to happen.
Cool.
So, I mean, so even like these indivisible and groups like that, like without even making an assessment of what their politics are, you already got people who are like, they're in your ballpark, or they're in the neighborhood of your ballpark. And then it's much easier to bring them in because they're interested in something and they're mad about something. And, you raise their consciousness, and I don't know, it's like you're titrating.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just like, when I'm on Twitter, I'm trying to just completely ride the fact that Manchin and Sinema, they're the ones standing in the way of a 2022 Democratic Congress. They're the ones standing in the way of Biden's presidency. It's like as long as legislation is getting held up by Democrats, they're the ones sabotaging it. It's not the AOCs. It's not
exactly.
So I don't want to. Hog the mic too much, but I'll leave with my advice for kind of getting into anti-vaxxers' heads.
Okay.
So I found that it's effective. I have a friend, like in the music scene, and I have a bunch of friends who have just been completely infected by the fucking anti-vax, over-skepticism, over-contrarianism, and I found that the way to kind of get them to start questioning the anti-vax stuff is you frame anti-vax as a conspiracy by Big Pharma, because what generates the need or the demand for vaccine mandates? It's a bunch of people getting the virus. Now, what leads to a bunch of people getting the virus when a vaccine exists? A bunch of people not having the vaccine. So it's in Big Pharma's best interest to have a large portion of the population not vaccinated. So all
right.
It's just fighting their tinfoilery with tinfoilery, and it gets them to.
That's interesting.
Kind of.
To me, that sounds like hogwash, but to somebody who's inclined to be
in favor of
need
hogwash,
conspiratorial thinking, that's interesting. Appreciate the call, man.
Oh, hey, thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much for giving me the time.
Thanks so
I
much.
will say, like, that reminds me of Octopus, the Guy Lawson's book. Do you remember that story? It's about Sam Israel, who was a sort of a not quite Bernie Madoff level. He had scammed a bunch of people, hedge fund, and then he thought it was so rigged. He thought everything was so rigged that he fell prey to a scam. That there was a secret, essentially Federal Reserve only for rich people. Mm-hmm. And he ended up losing all the money that had been invested with him because he thought like he could make the money back. It was like a guaranteed thing. And because he had seen scams on Wall Street, he was convinced that there were bigger scams that he could get in on. And he got taken, and then he tried to fake his own suicide or his own death, and now he's in prison.
Oh.
Yep.
All right.
I want to look into the secret Fed.
Don't you remember that story?
I don't remember that part.
It's an amazing story. What is the name of the book? Can't remember off the top of my head, but I think it was Octopus. Half the story reads like a it's a true story. Half the story reads like it's like a Bernie Madoff character, and then all of a sudden things just go like, what? And it just gets like, oh my God. Really funny. Establishment hack. Your guest today was quite sympathetic to corporate dens. Recall is undemocratic. Can you imagine a governor like Cuomo getting... Oh, are you out of your mind?
Yeah. That recalls are undemocratic. Wait till the election. I think that especially
12%.
Right. Yeah. And but even broadly speaking, I feel comfortable making a broad statement about recalls that they're undemocratic. Look at what happened to Kasham Swan in Seattle. Like, this is used for like powerful interests. It's not. They're not
It's
used
the
for the
definition
people
of
to go after
undemocratic.
Cuomo. Please.
They don't know you're not understanding what it is. If Newsom loses the first part of the ballot, or if he lost, right? Okay, if he got...
It's unconstitutional, I think.
If more people voted in favor of the recall, saying yes, then the next, like that second ballot, Larry Elder could get 17% of the vote, or what the vote would be, and he would be the governor. So it
in
is
other words,
undemocratic.
between the two ballots, between the two questions, 49% of people could vote to keep Gavin Newsom as governor, but he would still possibly not be governor anymore because Larry Elder got 16% of the vote.
Right.
I mean, that's a potential. This guy, whoever this is,
But even then,
this is just a troll.
Yeah.
I know who I'm getting a sense. I know. I don't know who the person is, but I'm getting a sense from these.
Even then, like things like recalls generally, I think, are anti-democratic, and so are things like term limits.
12%. 12%. It's a very hard way to argue that that's democratic. Fierce deity. The NFL's foremost anti-vaxxer, Cole Beasley, had such fan reach out to him saying they had tickets to a game but now couldn't go because the Bills are mandating vaccines, and he offered to buy them tickets to an away game. What a moron.
Yeah. He's a real piece of shit.
Demian, so sometimes I'll let you know what my mother texts me, and here is a recent one about my father-in-law being released from the hospital after being on a ventilator. I'm glad he didn't stay in the hospital any longer because I've heard lots of people say the most deaths from COVID were in the hospital after remdesivir and ventilator use. Both are a deadly combination. Home care, ivermectin, and zinc, among other items, are proven highly effective. Because he was released with oxygen because he still had a hard time breathing and is not in great shape, they just had to release him because they needed the beds. This is the Eastern Shore of Maryland. Oh, my God.
That's a quote. I was confused. That's what was said to your father about ivermectin.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah, I
am a data analyst, and I have sad news. I saw the videos you did since last year, and you were covering workers' strikes quite well until 3 months back. Now you are not. Construction workers, ballpark staff in San Francisco, healthcare workers in New York, Frito-Lay, and Nabisco, to name a few this week, lost interest. No, part of it is, to be honest with you, is that we don't necessarily clip everything that we mention in videos. Part of it is that we do a second show, and sometimes it feels like I cover stuff in that show, and then I feel like I've covered it here. It's just, and we haven't done as many like Newsday shows as opposed to like, which we should probably start doing more.
Next Tuesday, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
Part of it is over the summer you don't anticipate that much news, and so you book in advance and you get guests in. That's basically the reality of it. So, Matt, with all the discourse recently around the portion of Sam's diet eggs occupy, this question goes to all of them. How do you prefer your eggs cooked?
Scrambled.
Over medium.
Oh yeah, scrambled or fried.
Great. Lefty Luke. For a really great discussion of the history of populism, read Thomas Frank's book, The People Know, or you could listen to our interview with him about that book. Teacher Lauren, Shabbat Shalom, y'all. It's the second week of school, and I want to remind the parents out there to make sure the kids' masks are fitted properly. One of my chronic naked noses is quarantined with symptoms, and I'm worried for my class. Properly fitted mask, seriously. Indeed. Michael from Bavaria. Bernie should announce he'll add back one item each day the bill doesn't pass. North Dakota Llama. Morning MR. Talk around here in North Dakota is the anger and frustration at our state government that they are letting Afghan refugees into our state and how there'll be a drain on the economy and terrorists, blah, blah, blah. I sure hope North Dakota has the infrastructure to handle 49 people. Wish us luck.
Republican state
And you
parties.
heard that right. All the anger over 49 people.
Yeah.
Yeah, Republican state parties are basically Nazis.
All right, 3 more of these. Pet friend. Sammy, why don't you use Festools? They are the best. I did get a Festool track saw, and that has changed my life. It was partly a gift certificate I got for my birthday, and then I just went. It's expensive, super expensive, but I think I could get rid of my table saw if I wanted to now. So,
Big deal.
Brock from Ohio. Not sure if it's been discussed, but Heaven Hill workers are on strike in Bardstown, Kentucky. They make a bourbon such as Elijah Craig and Evan Williams, as well as many other spirits. They have the lowest starting pay in the industry and management proposal for a new contract, including implementing a schedule that would eliminate a good portion of weekend overtime pay and less than $1 raise. They've already hired a security firm, bodyguards to intimidate workers. You can text StepUpHH23396 for a link to send an email to HH ownership. Oh, okay. Bradley, Step Up HH 23396. We'll put that in the blog post. Shoot, how do my notes work on this thing? Here we go. Okay, 2 more. Shoot. Ahego Sam Seder. I don't think Ben understands that Newsom gets elected because he props up the housing market. Texas is a place to get cheap shit. And the final IM of the day. Oh, this is a good one. Shoot. Flairchild says, happy Friday. Have a great weekend. Matt, Bradley, Emma, great job. See you guys Monday.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie bar. Finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I guess somewhere the choice was made for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive between the 101 and the 5. Do you know how far the detour takes you? Yeah, I know